All right, I'm going to start it up, I guess,
Okay.
as soon as it goes live. Okay, and we are live with the first Scratchcast podcast, I suppose you could call it.
We're we're taking things down podcast style, so we can join a number of people who talk about whatever they want, and this
All
time
right.
only this one probably doesn't have any alcohol beverages.
Nope, sorry, you've got to provide your own, and even then, we're probably not going to acknowledge that.
It's definitely a BYOB affair.
What's We could always say not in my backyard. I forgot what is it?
Oh, NIMBY.
NIMBY? Yeah,
Yep.
that's what it reminds me of whenever I hear that for some reason.
Yeah, a good way to beat NIMBY is just have somebody say that Walmart's planning to open a near you, and
Oh yeah,
everybody's going to be NIMBY.
the super centers.
Yeah, that actually happened. Not where I live now, but where I used to live, and everybody was like that. Actually, the way people were at first, they were saying we're okay with Walmart if it comes, just as long as it can't be a super center. Basically, if they do like one of those neighborhood
Uh,
WalMarts,
I
everybody in that district was okay with that as long as it was that size, because they knew if it was too big, that the particular area where they're going to build it already has a lot of apartments, and they're not the greatest anymore. And they're not as good as they used to be, so they didn't want all that. And then the councilwoman at the time, and I probably shouldn't say this because it was a woman, therefore it could be construed as misogyny, but she she was really trying to be go gung ho and really fervent about, no, it's not in my backyard and we don't want it. It's right next to this really big and successful park that we just built, and we don't want to put that Walmart there. And the citizens, residents were like, well, no, as long as it's not too intrusive, we're okay with it. And then it turned into everybody was NIMBY, and then you knew what was going to happen anyway, right?
I
Walmart was going to push it no matter what, because when they have their eye set on something, they're going to do it. And then all of a sudden, the councilwoman does a 180 and like, oh well, now that I looked at it in detail, and I took a deeper look at it, and I think it's for the best of the citizens in this district if we open up the Walmart. And within no time, the minute it opened, they're already tagging up the Walmart with graffiti.
Yeah, I actually think that's what happened around here because we don't have any super centers.
That's
So,
actually, I'm trying to think. When I lived in New Orleans, I think they only had one super center. It was one right by the Mississippi River, and it had its own special kind of New Orleans theme to it.
that's interesting.
Whereas the rest of the WalMarts were regular WalMarts, and they were old and ugly. One they colored like brown and blue instead of the gray, blue and white and red color scheme.
Uh,
Uh, and that one was in the suburb, and then they had another one that was in a terrible area that had the generic color scheme. And the super center. The only reason the super center worked out is because at the time where it was at, there was nothing. There was nothing else there. It was an industrial area, so they didn't have to worry about somebody saying, "Well, it's near my neighborhood." But last time we went there, they ended up building a neighborhood right next to the Walmart. So
hmm.
guess that didn't work out. And
Well,
then
it's interesting because there's a whole bunch of super center WalMarts upstate. So it's just like it's off limits here or something.
and that's the funny thing, because Poughkeepsie, I still think to this day they don't have one. I think only I think you have to go further down, either to Newburgh or something, but you have to go a little bit further down from Poughkeepsie to even get to a Walmart. Or no, they finally did build one, and I think it might be a super center, but I don't think it is. But they finally built one on the main road that was right right behind where my house used to be. I think they built one there, but
Mm.
they don't have them. They're not close by. Like if you go to say Houston, you can go 5 minutes and you'll run into not only another Walmart but another super center. You'll rarely find like a neighborhood Walmart or anything like that. It's almost always a super center, and there are definitely some tropes of going into that Walmart. If you go 2 o'clock at night, expect everybody who's there and to go to the self checkout line and expect them to have their family of 10 with them, and
Oh wow.
they're either going to want to buy $5 worth of stuff and pay with $100 bill, or they're going to want to buy $500 worth of stuff and pay with a check. And then they're gonna split the family up and make sure that they take all four self checkout aisles. And at least when I was in Houston, the bastions of high order thinking that composes Houston, uh, they they didn't have a lot of actual registers open. So your only choice was really self checkout, or you take that one register that was open that was already backed up and people were already had like 50 items with them per person.
The super center that we had upstate, they never had self checkout until very recently. I think within the last year or so. So they finally caught up with the times on that. And I used to go really late sometimes, like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, but it was always really empty at that point. So
Yeah, when you actually go to the store, at least for us, it was empty. But the problem for me anyway was when I would go to the store, it was empty all until you got to the to checkout line. That's when it's like no matter where you go, you're going to be waiting on all of these people, and then they're going to decide that they spent too much money, so they're going to want to take one of the other toys back or whatever they got, which is all the way on the other side of the store, and then they have to get help from a Walmart associate or whatever they call them, and then they have to wait for them to go back, and then they decide, oh, we found this other toy that's cheaper. Okay, well let's get that, and so then they have to go back to get the other toy, and then they decide they want to go get a Snickers bar or something, but there's no Snickers bar in the self checkout line, so they have to go to one of the other registers that are closed, and so they have to go to the open one instead and get that,
oh man.
and then they want to go and try to cash the check at the self checkout line. So if they get like a paycheck, they want they can't. The customer service center is not open,
All
so
right. What?
so they try to cash their paycheck in the self checkout line instead of the customer service center, which never works, but they try it anyway.
Wasn't there a website or something? People of Walmart, and it would just
Yeah,
be
that's right.
like embarrassing photos.
Yeah, I think it was called peopleofwalmart.com.
I wonder if that still even exists.
I wouldn't be surprised, and now Walmart's trying to. Um, since I had to buy something at Walmart.com recently, I just find it funny because now they're trying to jump on the bandwagon of other tech companies like Amazon and eBay and all of them, and they're trying to have a data science or software engineering center in Northern California in the Bay Area, and so now they have like these big recruiting efforts in Northern California and talking about all the great benefits that they have and everything that they do, and it it's interesting because of the reputation that area of California has. Well, compared to even the rest of California, you would think they would be so anti-Walmart, but then they're like, oh well, no, they support this and they support that and they have these kinds of benefits.
Well, they have that diversity video, so that probably gives them an in with San Francisco anyway.
Yeah, I could believe that. And then the people who are into the data science thing, they think, oh well, they do functional programming, or I can do stuff for Walmart.com. So, and that's okay. So it's interesting. It's nice that we started talking about Walmart instead of what we were originally intending to talk about. But
However, that is the perfect segue.
I was about to say that given the way things are at Walmart and the things people get, it is a good segue.
Yes, let's see if I can. Oh, okay. I can bring it up. However, it looks a little weird. Okay, centered. There we go. That's better.
What's that noise in the background? It sounds like one of Dalton's golems or burping.
Oh, it's some air horn went off.
Oh, did somebody graduating or something?
I don't know. It's some kind of siren I hear every once in a while late at night. I'm not sure what its purpose is, but it figures that it would start now, and of course I have the window open since it's rather hot in here.
Yeah, I'll say that's the only good thing about it being so AC centric down here. You can always bet that air conditioning will be ready and available.
Yeah, we actually have an air conditioning unit, but trying to save on the electric bill. But
Uh,
it must be my white privilege.
in our apartment, we didn't have a choice but to save on our electric bill because our AC unit went down like every month.
Oh wow.
And we would always try to explain it to them, and even the guys next door would say, yeah, we had a friend that lived in your unit, and it was always the same problem that it would freeze, and they'd never believe us, and then they would fix it, and then it would freeze again, and they wouldn't do anything. So we were perpetually at the lowest 80 degrees in the house. Uh, so we were forced to save, and it wasn't really saving because we still ended up spending a lot compared to what I would have to pay now for a house for AC. So I mean, it didn't help that there were cracks and foundation wasn't all that good, but
Of
that
course.
that's why I don't live there anymore. Well, that and the fact that we were trying to open up the Mushroom Kingdom there,
Yeah.
but it's
Only those mushrooms didn't help you grow and defeat evil turtle kings.
yeah, and then the other thing with that is much like how there are all these other ideologies where their ideology is the only way, and if you say anything to the contrary, you're wrong and you should be destroyed and censored. It was the same thing for that apartment where people were saying, well, buying is really overrated, and you shouldn't buy a house, and you'll only get yourself into trouble. You should just rent
Oh
and
yeah, make us
you,
rich forever.
right, and you'll be able to do whatever you want. And then somebody, I think they wrote either an article in the New York Times or Forbes. They're like, oh well, I rented instead of owning a house, and I got to share an apartment with Chub Rock, and like, oh man,
Whoa.
that's really something. Rappers who were prominent in 1990 and 91, man, and that's really convincing me. I know that if I were to rent another apartment here, I would be able to share one with Chub Rock, even though he lives in New York. But what let's let pesky like location get out of the way. Let's not let that.
Now let's forget all about that. Okay. I think things cut out. Yep. Lost the call. It's coming back though, I think. Good old connection problems. Are we back? No, we're not. Alright, so Skype decided to just cut off for some reason here. Not sure why. Hopefully, we'll get back up and running shortly. Let me see what I can do here because this is not a good thing.
Oh, did I get cut off?
Yeah, I guess we're having technical difficulties.
That's impossible because you're a white male, so
Yeah, well, I don't know what's going on, but my privilege isn't working.
technology is designed for you. So it should,
I can't turn on the air
oh,
conditioning, and I can't keep Skype connected. This is not going well.
well, maybe it's balancing out because of all the non-white, non-male people that are involved.
I like
You
how
know,
Twitter always just recommends like really random people to follow. I'm like, okay, I don't have any clue who this person is. Which I
that's
just realized it's gonna randomly pop up on the screen because I was clicking around, and well, that's a little weird, but oh well. It's like, yeah, let's just add this random person. Why?
since I don't have an account, it always recommends I add the same three people,
Oh, okay.
which is Ellen DeGeneres and Barack Obama and somebody else that I don't pay any attention to.
Well, that's an interesting pair.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what the mentality is. Pages I go and look at, you would think with all of these hard-ons that tech companies have for data science that they would know that, or they would have some algorithm for determining who you should be interested in following based on who you visited or something. But I what do I know? I'm just a guy from a simple state. I'm not like those world-changing Bay Area or Silicon Valley software engineers. I'm just a regular old boring guy who doesn't even live in a place that has a sizable startup community. I don't know any venture capitalists here, so my opinion is not relevant.
Well, remember, opinions are only relevant when they're the right opinions. So I've learned my lesson there.
And that's how we've gotten into this article. Since I don't know if I got cut off at that part.
Yeah, I think you did. But I was just curious if this person is like an actual writer here or just a contributor, but it doesn't really tell you. It just says Bethany Rutter is a journalist and a blogger who writes about fat bodies, plus size fashion, and body positivity.
And I believe it says she's a fat activist, if I'm not.
It does
Uh,
say that in the article. I don't even
I
understand how that's a thing.
I didn't know that existed, but
I didn't know it existed outside of Tumblr, to be honest.
yeah, that's kind of the scary thing is, and that was actually something I was saying earlier today. Is these people always have these things. They say something, and there's always a small grain of truth in whatever they say or validity, and then they have the rest of what they're saying, and it's completely different and completely inaccurate from anything else that they've said, or
Right.
that's in tune with reality. But because of the fact that they said this one thing that was true, everybody thinks that, oh well, let's just believe what these people are saying.
And then they always have to come up with these studies that apparently support their crazy ideas, but like I said, you can pretty much find a study to prove anything you want.
Well, I tried to look at more about this person, and I'm kind of in danger of shaming this person. So I don't want to send links for fear that
You're gonna be accused of
that
doxing.
yeah the
My guess,
sensitivity for me.
if she's considering herself a fat activist, my guess is she is a bit overweight herself.
Oh well, that part is a given,
Yeah.
but I don't think the underarm hair was a given.
Oh no.
So she says she also writes for a site I suppose called Arched Eyebrow. I don't know if that's her own site. It looks like it is. And
Okay.
she says she is a fat tattooed femme. I don't know if when she says femme is she implying
I guess I'm
uh,
doxing too because oh boy, here's the photo.
I don't know if when she says femme she's implying she's a lesbian, and so in that dynamic. She's
Yeah,
not the butch, she's the femme, or I don't know what she's getting at there.
does that just
Uh,
mean feminine? Because I they used that term in the that Miss Piggy Feminist Award article too.
they do, and that's kind of the confusion because I've read older, maybe 70s, 80s LGBT novels, and at that point they strictly use it to refer to a lesbian couple where the more feminine
Oh, okay. That
or
kind
the
of makes sense, I guess.
yeah, the one with the more feminine traits or that embraces the femininity is called the femme, and then the one that doesn't is called the butch. And so,
Are those politically correct terms now? I don't even.
well, this is the 70s and 80s, so we can assume that they're not politically correct by any means.
Yeah, I remember Butch wasn't, but I the funny thing is I've seen it used now, and people were, I guess, sincere in their use of it, rather than using it as an insulting term. So, it's like that whole taking the word back movement,
Yeah, they're trying to take the power out of it.
right? Which
Yes,
you could just decide for yourself what how much power a word has to you. I mean, somebody could call you fat to your face, but you don't have to really be offended by it.
that's true. And then to some extent, whenever you get into the whole plus size debate, there's always a degree where somebody says, well, it's not that bad, and if somebody's working out and trying to stay healthy, it's usually really not that serious. But unfortunately, in this article that we're really taking a long time to get into, when we get into it further, you will see that this is not an example of what I just said. This is not the type of person who might be plus sized and still trying to work
I
out and
think,
still in
yeah,
fitness and just
it.
trying to keep a particular shape.
I'm not sure if it's Skype or what, but it is. You are cutting out a little bit here and there.
I don't know if that's my cooling device or not. Somebody else has said that happened before, but as far as my connection goes, I don't have any issues with it.
Yeah, I don't have any internet issues either. Well, so I guess we could. I don't know. I don't know if we don't necessarily have to read it live, but it seems like the basic idea of it is that they're trying to say that now there's a study that's saying that being overweight doesn't necessarily mean that you won't live as long as somebody who is thin.
Right, and they do try to make a point to say overweight or mildly obese. So so there is at least a little bit of an implication that if you are morbidly obese, so if you're greater than a certain BMI, if you're on either extreme, you're not going to live longer. But my issue with they say that there's evidence for this, but they haven't really cited. I mean, they've done some citation, but they haven't linked to any source that lets you evaluate it. They're just the evidence that she's citing in the article is basically something that said, well, we just looked at stuff and we found it from this journal and from this journal, and we found it in this year, and so we've drawn the conclusion that this is what that means. If you are a certain BMI, which I think is 25 to 29, which is considered overweight,
Right. I
you'll live
mean,
you'll live longer, but I don't know the sophistication of this study that they're presenting or the data. They don't link to the data, so there's no way to determine how they conducted the experiment or how they're using the data or anything like that. Which is if you've had the experience in the statistical experience, that's usually the kind of question you ask. But um, I don't see anything like that here, so there's not a good way to really determine are they just making things up or are they kind of cherry picking what they want? And so the evidence that they live longer, or that if you're overweight you live longer, it's not really the evidence isn't really substantive. It's just, well, I found this, so trust me. And
Yeah.
that's no worse than when I've actually read scholarly journals about scientific discoveries, and in an actual peer-reviewed article for academic consumption, they've said something to the something similar to the effect of, "We found this, and we discovered that this result shows that it's better to do this way than another way." Uh, we're not going to show what we did, and what our work looks like, or how we even did it, but it works, so trust us.
That's interesting. Well, the thing about the whole BMI thing is that the BMI scale is actually pretty harsh. I mean, it doesn't take much to be considered overweight on that. I mean, according to the BMI scale, I'm overweight, and I'm not by any means what somebody would consider fat.
Right, and then there's also the issue for people who are very muscular, who it'll be the same. It'll be applicable to them, where they'll be considered overweight.
Right, because in regards to their height and weight ratio, it'll be showing that they weigh more than what's supposed to be considered on the scale.
And from my memory, it doesn't go through any effort to determine body fat or anything like that. It's literally just, okay, let's take your height, and let's determine your weight, and then, okay, based on that, you fit in this metric. And
I feel like I'm not 100% on this, but I feel like it takes that and then it says based on that, this is how much body fat you have, or something of that nature.
yes, I believe it does. I believe it says, oh well, it's basically, you must have like 16% or something like that. Unless I'm thinking about the machines that try to determine that, and they mention what body fat is. But I think they do try to say, well, that is what your body fat is, or
Right. I mean, at the very least, in this article, it does say it is hard to say whether this research will lead to any meaningful change in how we think about bodies and weight loss. There is such an emotional, cultural, and financial investment in dieting and the diet industry that it seems we will never entirely shake it off. Thin privilege is rampant, and people truly believe that working hard to lose weight gives them moral high ground. Okay, so as far as the whole moral high ground thing, I have encountered people that you think like, oh yeah, I go to the gym every day, and these fatties don't do anything with their lives, and that. All right, so to that regard, I understand what that's saying, but I feel like this takes it to the opposite extreme where it's like I'm fat and you can't say anything about it because I'm healthy, but there's obviously health issues that come with being overweight, whether they want to acknowledge that or not.
right. And you can't always look at people like that either way, because usually people with that kind of attitude are doing, they can take either extreme. Either they can, or both, they can eat themselves into oblivion from depression, or some other psychological issue,
Right.
or they can put it into working out all the time. And in that case, they can think, oh well, at least I'm doing something more constructive with myself, and I'm being healthy. But they're at the expense of obsessing over it. And some people, a lot of people I know, they would get annoyed by the constant Facebook status, where somebody has to say that they're at the gym all the time, and they have to take pictures of it, and it really doesn't do anything. To me, it's just as bad as when people take pictures of whatever they're eating. And
Yeah, yeah. It's just attention grabbing, pretty much. I mean, but
or
they're like, "Oh, I'm proud of my progress and I want to show it off." Well, okay, but not everybody cares to see. So,
Right, and you can show off your progress by putting a number down or something like that. If your goal is to lose weight, you can say, okay, I'm this weight. If you have to be that if you're that needy for attention, then you can do something like that instead, to where it's easy to ignore or something like that. I mean, to me, it's as bad as people that do unboxing videos on YouTube. Like, oh, I just got a PS4. Let me unbox it.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty boring. The only time when I think it could possibly be interesting is if it's a little bit, something a little bit more visually appealing than a console. You don't want to look at a console, you want to play it.
Right. Or I would only think that the time I might find it useful is if I'm getting something and there's really not a lot of information on it. So the
Yeah.
fact that I'm getting a Japanese 3DS, I'm not 100% sure what comes with it and what doesn't, and what I can plug into it and what
Well,
I
not
can't
a
plug
not a
into it.
charger, right? I'm pretty sure it's without a
Yeah,
charger.
it doesn't come with a charger. The Japanese and European DSs or 3DSs never came with a charger for their arbitrary, oh, it will save money on hardware reasons. And actually, the thing that annoys me about that is when I saw the announcement, and then of course I decided what to see what the derelict of human stupidity that is GameFAQs had to say about it in the forums. Naturally, you had people that were complaining. The Americans were complaining about the new 3DS because this was the first time in North America that we had to worry about getting another charger, or that we didn't get one. I just bought a 2DS and a 3DS at North American edition, and all of those things came in with the box, and SD card came and everything like that. They got a lot more right out of the box, literally. So for once, I'm not using this stupid cliche in an IT context. It's literally out of the box. But then in Japan, they don't have that, and then in Europe they don't have that. So people were complaining on GameFAQs, and of course this turned into you stupid spoiled Americans and
Oh, jeez.
all this other garbage that GameFAQs always devolves into, uh, because that's just the way it is. But they the one thing I do remember is they're like, oh well, you can just get a charger for $4 or $5. Well, I just bought a 3DS charger, and unless you're getting it used, the MSRP on a new charger is $8.99 US dollars.
Hmm.
So that it's not, it's just an extra $4 or $5 charge. In which case somebody might make the reasonable argument, well, if it's just $4 or $5, if that's how much they're going to sell it for, then they're marking it up, obviously. So really the cost to them is minimal. So the excuse of, well, we're doing it to cut down on hardware costs, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because you can, if it only costs you $2 or $3 to make, then you can just tack that on to the cost of the unit.
Yeah, I
And
mean, no matter what, I just think that if you have a battery operated, console or handheld or whatever you want to call it, and it needs the battery charged in order to play it, you need to include that in the package. It doesn't make sense to have a half charged system and then what, you get a couple hours out of it and then you're like, oh shit, I got to go buy a charger.
right, and then they say, oh well, you can just use your DSi or 3DS charger. Well,
Implying
okay,
that everybody on Earth bought one.
right, because I certainly had no plans on buying a 3D or a DSi when it came out. And as far as the 3DS came out, well, yeah, I thought I would eventually buy that, but that was back in the days when they came with chargers too.
No, I just had DS Lite, and anything that came out after that was like, no way, that's too much for me. You guys are, then there was what, XL, and then there's the Lite or DSi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
DSi XL, and then 3DS, then 3DS XL,
too much, too much.
and now it's new 3DS, and then new 3DS XL, and North America isn't getting the original or the basic new 3DS. They're just getting the XL, and people were complaining about that because, oh well, it's smaller and
But
it's more compact. And then some, it wasn't uh, it wasn't the bastion of high order thinking called Kotaku. I think it was IGN or something else, some other site maybe it was Polygon, where they were saying, "Oh well, the other reason that it sucks that we're not getting this is because we won't have the customizable faceplates, or it's not as easy to get customizable faceplates." And it's like, well, okay, that's not really a deal breaker for me. And it's like, oh, it has the custom Super Famicom controller scheme or button scheme. It's like, okay, now you're splitting hairs over buttons and faceplates. It's not, if that means we get the XL, fine. I mean, for me, it's fine because my hands on a regular 3DS will be painful for me. So if
Yeah, I
an
like the
XL,
size of the XL just because the screen is bigger, and compared to the DS, my regular DS screen, it's massive.
yeah, and that's why I kind of always plan to get an XL because it was big enough for my hands and the screen was bigger. So that was a good thing. But I actually do have an interesting thing about Kotaku that I guess I'll talk about later.
Yeah,
Once we
we'll
get
we'll head over there. I think because there was something else that I there was a couple of things on there that were silly that I saw. They weren't really like make a video about it material, but they were stupid nonetheless. But since we were talking about XL implying extra large, that means Nintendo is probably body positive.
right. And well, in Japan it's called the LL, and I'm not entirely sure what the first L stands for. Um, so I don't know what LL means, but it's other than uh, the first two letters of a prominent rapper. That's the only LL I know about. But I guess when I get the box on Monday or Tuesday or whenever, I'll hopefully be able to figure out what it's supposed to stand for. But uh, the interesting thing in the sentence that you had mentioned previously is that a few sentences later you showed me that she also wrote that apparently many people think there's something virtuous in consuming low-calorie food and going to the gym,
Uh
and
huh.
refuse to recognize that's a culturally constructed myth that props up the diet industry, patriarchy, and oppressive beauty
Oh,
standards.
yes, I love that. That is my favorite line in this whole entire article because it is just once somebody whips out the whole patriarchy and oppressive standards argument, I shut down because it's like, you're just pulling things out your ass at that point.
And I wonder, because I remember reading this somewhere. I wonder if any of these. Well, okay, I don't wonder because I know the answer is no. But I'm just curious if anybody would ever do the research back to the times when in society an overweight person was actually considered beautiful
Right, right.
and
Cuz
and
look at like Renaissance paintings even.
right, and in fact, if you were overweight, you were considered privileged because you had access to all of this food that you could afford to eat, and therefore you were showing your privilege by being overweight.
Well, we can't ignore, we have to ignore those things because then that doesn't paint the narrative that we're trying to invest ourselves into.
Right, and then the problem I have with a lot of these types of articles is or or blog posts, because really Tumblr is the only other place you're going to see something like fat shaming, is they act as though this has been prevalent since the beginning of society. That
Yeah, yeah.
society has always created this image of a human that represents the golden ratio in terms of proportion. And despite the fact that the concept of a golden ratio didn't exist until sometime in before the Common Era with the Greeks, therefore any time before then, Bronze Age or anything like that, there was no concept of a golden ratio. So proportion and uh, the diet industry and all that wouldn't have made any sense back then.
Right. Well, I don't know. I just think something like saying oppressive beauty standards is ridiculous simply because not only the point that you made, but like things through time in society will change. What is the standard at one point will not be 100 years from now. It's always changing over time, And then on top of that, okay, well, you're talking about what? The US in this article? Where are you talking about? Because, the US is not the only place on the planet, and throughout different parts of the world and different cultures, there are different standards of beauty within those cultures.
Although given her spelling and given the website this is on, she I assume she's
Is it
talking about the
is it
UK,
Europe? Yeah, it might be that.
but without citing any examples, because who examples are logic and evidence are forms of the patriarchy. So
Well, I guess either way, it's a Eurocentric look into the oppressive beauty standards or something.
right, because I'm still sure that to this day, there are certain cultures that still appreciate those that are overweight and find them attractive. And
But what is even? I mean, how do you even define oppressive beauty standards? What does that do? Like, what does that stop you from doing in life? Can you what? You just can't be a model? Well, so what? Neither can I. I mean, what does that mean?
which even then that's not true, because so once upon a time years ago, I actually worked. I didn't work for them, but I did take orders for Lane Bryant,
Uh huh.
and so that's they consider that a plus size
Yep. Yep.
apparel. Uh, they sell plus sized clothing for women, and they had that's the first time I heard plus size, and they had plus size models for it. So clearly, if they have models who are what we would consider overweight, and they're once again they're models, then I'm not seeing how there's a what's the beauty standard there.
Right. And
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 is
I
that
mean,
oppressive?
everybody has their own. Each individual person has their own idea of what is and what is not attractive. It's just personal preference. Obviously, society or beauty industry or fashion industry, they will put forth a certain, body type or model and put that out there as what is beautiful and what you're supposed to strive for or whatever. But people don't have to listen to it. I don't understand what's with people in marketing and not being able to handle not seeing themselves there. Like, I don't care if I'm not in an Axe commercial or it's just I don't understand why that's so bothersome.
Yeah, I don't really know when it became when people became so insistent on seeing themselves. I know there were times back, even 10 years ago, where people might say, well, I don't see enough black people in this position or in that position,
Uh huh.
and when I do see them on television or in the media, they usually portray them as the standard cliches that they always have, and so I wish that I could see that they at least acknowledge that there are people who are not like that, and
Uh huh.
there are people who have an education and other things like that. But at the same time, nobody said that they demanded it out of their media, that they needed to see it. They just said that they wanted to see it.
Yeah,
And
like it might be nice.
right, and then other times people might take that, and that might motivate them to say, why don't I make something that does that? Why don't I make some form of entertainment that shows exactly what I'm trying to show? Or why don't I, if I want to be a journalist, why don't I highlight that? Why don't I make content out of that? Even if I can't put it into some other editor's uh, periodical, I can make my, this is the age of the internet, so why can't I create my own blog where I'm showcasing and highlighting those people?
Hmm.
There used to be a time where that's how people would take these issues, or they say, I don't see this. Same thing in games. They might say, I don't see this in a game, and so I want to represent this. We saw a video a while ago where Kevin Smith, he felt the need to do that because his brother was gay, and
Oh,
so
that's right.
he wanted to create Chasing Amy, to have a romance story that was
representative of gay characters, or
Right. He didn't go around saying, "Oh, well, why isn't Steven Spielberg or why isn't Stanley Kubrick or somebody? Why aren't they doing this? They should be doing it." And I'm gonna lie, or to quote,
my vote would be
paraphrase
for
Daria, I'm determined to lie on this couch until they do something about it. He didn't do that. He
my
went
vote
he
would
went up
be
and did it.
M Night Shyamalan.
Well,
He would
yeah,
obviously create the greatest homosexual character story arc,
right. And then we would find out at the end that the man or woman was dead the whole time, and
and that the straight people were actually the minority, and the whole world was gay outside of the village.
yeah, that reminds me of one uh,
I've got you cutting out again, unfortunately.
story where the I was saying that it reminds me of the short story with, I don't know, Sorba and some other person.
Oh, that was the was that the Gamergate thing?
Yeah,
Uh, that was terrible. Oh,
that's what that reminds me of, to a big deal where somebody's saying something like that, or it ends up being poorly written,
yeah, that was pretty bad.
and then they go around their defense or their defenders say that, oh well, it was a parody the whole time.
Nice job, I guess, considering nobody seemed to know.
I mean, if it was, I don't get any indication of that, but what do I know about parodies? I don't write anything like that.
No, you just read all that liberal stuff.
Yeah, I write all that liberal right wing stuff because depending on who you talk to, either you're liberal or you're right wing.
Those are the only choices, as far as I know. I'm sure somebody will actually take that statement seriously.
Well, we all know that Matt Bender does.
Oh, that guy.
Since now I guess his name is Bender and not Binder.
Oh, the I guess you know, as far as this fat shaming and all that, this article here mentions that health at every size movement, HAES apparently, and basically, I feel like what is happening here is I think it's good to not make fun of people or make them feel like shit for what they look like or their health issues, but at the same time, rather than using that as an excuse to enable them to stay the same size or stay at an unhealthy weight, it can be encouraging, as in, like, okay, well, let's not focus on the weight loss aspect, but let's focus on eating healthy, or let's focus on trying to get out for a walk every day. So when they say, like, oh, this health at every size thing, I can see it used for that, but to be used as a shield where it's like, I'm fat and I'm beautiful and that's all there is to it and I'm not going to do a damn thing about it, that's where it gets kind of silly to me. I mean, or maybe you are happy with whatever size you are. That's fine, but don't expect the rest of the world to like mold around your desires.
Yeah, it's like how if a woman is overweight, she automatically says she's a BBW, even though there's nothing to imply beautiful at all, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, I mean, you can think you're beautiful, you can feel beautiful, but obviously not everybody's going to agree.
But this is the internet, and as you've learned from recent videos, everybody has to agree. The only way that you can be independent and do things your
Your
own
own.
way is to agree with everybody else.
Oh, I I'm just like I'm kind of done replying to people seriously as far as that goes. Whoever comes in there, I'm just kind of messing with now because I don't know. There was that one guy like, "Oh, please, what's your point?" And I'm like, "My point was pretty clear. What's yours?" And he's like, "I don't really care." Okay, so yet you took the time to comment.
Yeah, it's always interesting how it's like, okay, they really start off with a lot of steam and they want to charge you with something. And then even if you were to answer, it's either they're going to say that, either they're going to say what's your point every time, or they're just going to repeat themselves. Like, oh, that's not a good point, or you don't make any points.
And then he also, same guy, just left a separate comment where he's like, "Why do you speak so frantically? Are you being chased?" And I said, "Yes, by the Manosphere. Send help!" Ah. And he's like,
Yeah,
I'll hide in my anti-woman cave. Save your own and good luck." And I was just like, somehow I think I'll survive.
yeah, that actually, not his comment, but I was recently talking about the one where somebody said that they had 45 years of trying to air their grievances with women, and that should be basically that should be sufficient enough time to change the attitudes between male and female, or that should change the mentality. 45 years is sufficient enough time. And I'm like, one, where did the 45 years number even come from? Was it
Yeah,
like
what?
no man was sitting in 1969 thinking, oh, if I were to get a divorce and I wanted custody of my children, it's infinitely more difficult for me to get that. And if I don't want to share my wealth with somebody who has proven time after time that she's not responsible, and she doesn't even try to support our kids, I don't want that. But I'm not going to say anything about that now. I'm going to wait until 1970, or wait till somebody else says it in 1970, and then it's okay. And then the other part of that was, well, okay, if you look at the other side of the coin with feminism,
Mm.
feminism did start 45 years ago. Feminism started, at least in the US, in the 19th century. So they've had to they've had to air their grievances for at least 100 years, and they've had to incrementally get what they wanted from feminism. So if it took them 100 years, what makes you think that 45 years is sufficient enough time for you? and 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 we don't even, we're not even saying that, we're not even looking deeper into that and saying, well, it's been a long lasting thing. That's why I said, well, 45 years is not sufficient enough time to.
Well, even even if this were true and this 45 years number is accurate, which I have no idea what the hell he's even talking about, what exactly are they trying to do to change things? As far as I know, it's just saying, "Oh, I'm bowing out. I'm done." So they're not going to change anything because they're not trying.
Right, that's a passive approach to it. It's just saying, well, somebody else said that they've been doing this for 45 years, and therefore it's been going on for 45 years, and I'm just not going to do anything about it.
Or
Well, okay.
or oh, I had a bad experience and now apparently that makes everybody of from that sex a bad person. Okay. But yet when people say all men are rapists, we speak up about it.
Right, and somebody would easily say, "Oh, well, you can't base one person off of one bad experience you had with, that's the same argument I've heard people give to me about why they're racist. Either way, why a white person would say they didn't like black people, or why a black person says they're racist toward white people. They don't trust any of them. And so, well, there's one person that said and did this, and therefore, I'm just going to assume they're all like that. Well, okay, that's not really that's not realistic. Everybody can't be a certain way. There's some people who, children are not inherently going to be racist. So.
Well, apparently everybody can be this a certain way as long as they're going their own way.
Right, and as long as that way converges to the same point, then
Uh,
you can go your own way as long as it's on the path that I have determined that everybody needs to take.
And I just think it's funny how it's like it's it's only acceptable to go after these certain things. Like the video I made, what, maybe 2 days later, the Tumblr
Yeah.
on rape culture. That's
Hmm.
like, oh, it's all likes. All the comments are like, oh yeah, this is stupid. I don't expect everyone to agree, but it'd be nice somebody to come in there and be like, this is not representative of the entirety of Tumblr. I mean, if you make me sympathetic with Tumblr, you've done something terrible.
Or or somebody's really they're really persuasive and their speechcraft skill is up really high.
It's just funny that it's like, oh, it's okay to go after this, but never touch this. But yet these are the same people that are be like, equality, treat everybody the same. Apparently not.
Well, a funny thing is I made a charge to those guys and I said, since you're coming up with all of these assumptions as to what my motives are, why don't you do some of your research and actually find out exactly, whatever you're trying to accuse me of or whatever you're trying to gain from me or trying to learn from me, why don't you do your research on it and actually look up and see what my real motives would be, and
Right.
or look at your motives and look at your other channel and see what you talk about.
Well, yeah,
Like,
everybody
nope.
everybody basically accused me of being a feminist or kissing women's asses when they just, like 2 seconds of clicking around would have shown them that the basis of most of the videos is like the extreme feminism crap, which, it just happens to be that that's what I've seen an overwhelming amount of stupid shit coming out of. But then I happened to find it from here, and well, it became something to talk about.
Right, and like I said, there's always a grain of truth. So from their complaint that there appears to be a lot of representation or there's a lot of exposure to the feminism of today. I would argue if you go online, then yes, you will encounter it. If you have any sort of hobbies, if you like video games or comics, you're inevitably going to encounter it, and whether you want to or not, or if you're on Tumblr or any of these places, you'll easily encounter it. But just because that's true doesn't mean that everything else is true. It's like, okay, you say you've aired your grievances and nobody wants to listen to you. Okay, well, and then if you're doing that and then you're saying, well, I'm going to bow out, then how many times have people said that? How many times have you heard the cliche of "don't give up and don't quit"?
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and to bring feminism back up, did they just quit when they said, okay, well, we got the right to vote, but we're not getting what we want in terms of jobs and pay. So they tried to have an equal rights amendment, um, 30, 40 years ago, and that fell through. And so we're just going to give up on the idea uh, that we're not going to get our rights, the rights that we want, whether they're valid or not. Uh, we're just gonna give up on it altogether. It's like, no, even despite the fact that the Equal Rights Amendment never came to fruition, you're still hearing this wage gap nonsense today.
Oh god, yeah. Even the president was talking about it, I guess, as if it's actually the whole 77 cents to the dollar thing.
Right, and even though that's not even factually accurate, and somebody else made this point, or I guess he calls himself Maddox. He made this point, but I mean anybody who knows who's worked in any industry before, who's worked in business long enough to know, especially if you want to start your own business, if that number were true, if they really get 77 cents to our dollar,
Yeah, why wouldn't people just hire more women?
exactly. Why
It wouldn't make
why
any sense. Especially a corporation. They are not going to go out of their way to spend more money than they have to.
I mean, if that's really true, then why is it when I walk into GameStop, I don't see, I don't see a bunch of women working at the GameStop. I mean, might see one or two as a manager and one as a GSA or whatever they call them, but I don't see them everywhere. Or
And
why is it that when I go into my job, if that's really true, why aren't there more software developers who are women? Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say there aren't enough women, black, and Latino software developers, and then at the same time say they get 77 cents or they get underpaid. If they were really that underpaid, then
they'd
more
be the
people,
most hired.
exactly, they would. I mean, it's more prevalent and more obvious for us down here because we're so close to Mexico, but you can clearly see that there are certain jobs that have a reputation for being low paying
Hmm.
that you're going to see certain people take those jobs because they're willing to work for less.
And then that reminds me of that whole tweet screen cap that had they're talking about, oh, we want more women in tech and all that stuff, but nobody's talking about more women in like coal mining and all those ridiculous jobs like of the oil rigs and stuff.
Those dangerous but
Yeah,
well-paying blue-collar jobs.
yeah, and then the woman commented on it like, oh, you men can keep those dirty jobs. Us women deserve better. It's like, really? That's equality?
It's like, well, you realize that, a trash, somebody that takes out the trash gets paid a lot of money, right? Oil field jobs are well paying. If you're telling me you want this nice white collar job like a software developer, you should probably be a software developer and then see if you feel that way after 5 or 10 years of doing it.
No, but
Like, pe-
instead they'll be working in the tech industry and come up with some arbitrary change for a symbol on a bathroom door, which I still can't figure out what that has to do with software development.
well, you can make anything a software project, or you can make any problem solvable with software. Facebook not having enough gender pronouns, well, you can make your own application that adds your preferred pronouns.
Uh,
Is the documentation for some overrated, unnecessary framework not using enough? It doesn't use all the gender pronouns you prefer. Well, just go and try to make a pull request and change the documentation, and then hope that it gets approved.
oh man, it's too much.
But it's like the thing that I always have an issue with whenever people make those complaints is nobody ever really sits and they look at the problem and they're immediately trying to assume that they know the why, and I don't think they do.
Probably not. Their why is usually oppression and uh, discrimination or whatever, prejudice.
And then they only look at select companies and things like that. And so, okay, if you look at Google and Apple and all that, well, okay, there are a couple of reasons why you might find less minorities at those companies, or you will find mostly white and Asian, and you won't find as many women in the engineering areas, and might have little to do with the fact that there are not as many women in the STEM fields. I mean, there's a culture. I hate to use that term, but there's an attitude at these companies that is not attractive
Right.
to a lot of people. You know, a lot of people come to me, especially if they're, I don't know, my age, and they'll say, or if they're older, and they'll say, well, why not work at a place like Google? They can do this. And the first two companies I worked at were obsessed with this idea of trying to copy everything that Google was doing, or everything that Facebook was doing.
Oh
Oh,
jeez.
if they're having, a place where people can if they're having margaritas every week or something like that, or if they're having all these things on their campus and they're doing this, then that's something that we need to do too because Google's doing it. But the problem with it is that they don't sit and think about the why. They say, okay, well, Google's doing it, we need to do it. And I think the business owners do know why Google does it, or if they don't realize that's why Google's doing it, then they think that they're creative enough to have figured out on their own that, oh, well, if I do what they're doing, I can get people to work longer hours.
Uh,
And so from that perspective, I've always wondered why they don't just, if anybody's ever really come out to say, the reason I'm not interested in these engineering type jobs, or the reason I didn't major in a STEM field, is because I don't see the return on the investment.
right.
I'm interested to see if they actually spend enough time with these people to see, why aren't women choosing it? And they have if it were not privileged, if it weren't a privileged society, or if it was, or if somebody else had the power, they wouldn't be able to choose what they major in. Other people in other countries, they are forced into choosing a certain major when they
Right.
go to college. They have to major in a certain thing whether they want to or not. And and so, and in a lot of cases, they drive one thing home. A lot of countries will drive home, you need to be a STEM major, and so they'll do any of the engineering or sciences or mathematics or anything like that, regardless of whether they're good at it or interested in it. And whereas here they have the choice, and a lot of them don't want to do it. And well, you could ask them, and you could find some people that say, well, I don't like the existing attitudes of computer science now, where it's a bunch of guys who are socially awkward and they don't spend enough time with women, and so they say stupid things. And I can be totally sympathetic to that, because when I was a CS major, I did observe some of these idiotic things firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna defend guys and say they never do or say anything stupid because I know that's not true.
But I would be leery to say that every woman you ask, that's going to be
Their
their reason.
reasoning, yeah.
I would even be reluctant or reticent to believe that that's the majority reason. I would think that's a big reason, but not the majority.
Well, another thing is who is actually complaining that there's not enough of a certain gender in a certain job other than the activists?
Well, it's a good thing that you ask, and it will probably segue into another part of this podcast. But the place I remember seeing it most prominently is a Gawker um, entertainment known as Valleywag. Back when it was prominent, or for in its second wind. So Valleywag started several years ago and fell off some time after, and then they tried to revive it with such brilliant writers as Sam Biddle and Natasha Tiku.
Oh, good
Um,
thing.
Initially being the two writers on it, they had a third come in, and I don't know what happened to him. Biddle left Valleywag and started being more of a general Gawker writer. Tiku left Gawker altogether and went somewhere else. I think The Verge or something.
Ugh, that
And
website's terrible too.
and so of those three, Tiku was the one who was very big on driving this home. And Biddle was interested in that narrative as well, or pushing that agenda. But it was definitely Natasha Tiku who was always talking about, look at the lack of minorities and women in these fields.
Mm-hmm.
And they always wanted to make it sound like, well, it's the dude bro culture of these startups that are causing it. And they would generally look at at Silicon Valley companies and startups. So that was their big thing. They were always looking at those companies in particular because it's really easy to make an example out of them because to no shock at all, the startups generally have a similar type of culture, especially if it was started by somebody who's 22 or 23 because they don't know any better
Well,
a
they
lot of
really
times.
have some asinine job postings, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then that only makes things worse because of, inevitably they have these ideas in their head about what they think a company should be. They
Like
they've heard
what the perfect ideal place to work would be.
right, they've heard the horror stories about corporate America, but at the same time, a lot of these guys came from very well-to-do backgrounds, and so they have a lot of access to people with business insight who can tell them things that I think would be more informative to them to say, well, if you have that idea, you know, if you have this kind of positive mantra that you push all the time, people will be more interested in working there. And a positive benefit from that is, oh, well, they can work longer because they'll be happy working there. And so they do that, but they're also naive and inexperienced. And so what do they know? They've done nothing for 4 years, but kind of breeze their way through college. They went to an Ivy League school or Stanford or a public Ivy, and and probably in a fraternity, and they got all these things, all these people who were willing and ready to help them out. And so you have all of the support and help, and you didn't really have a difficult period of time where you had to struggle like the average person would have to in their 20s, where
Right.
they make a stupid mistake, they overspend for something, and their parents don't have the money to help them out, or they can't give them the money to help them out, or they won't. And so they have to go and get a job or do something like that and figure out a way to make ends meet so that they can still keep things going, and they don't have to worry about that. So they they've had a relatively sheltered life. So when they create this company, they know, okay, well, I want to create a company, and like most young people do, I know I want to get all my friends in on this because I want to be able to have my own money, and I don't want to work for anybody in corporate world, and I want to get my friends in on this because they know, and hey, let's get that guy whose papers we used to copy all the time, and let's get all these people, and let's have them work for us. And so of course, when that's the dynamic, then yeah, you're not going to find too many people that look different because
Yeah, it's like a guy
they're
and his group of friends.
right. And so if his group of friends are in charge of hiring, then they're going to get their group of friends. And it's but that situation isn't unique to startups. I mean, I can give you a personal example where somebody I know recently got hired at a place because the person that hired him, they worked at another company,
Uh,
and so when that one person moved to the other company, that
they were
that
able to
person was
follow.
right, that person was in charge of creating a team, managing that team, so she could bring whomever she wanted. And so of course she's going to bring somebody that she knows. That's a part of the game of working in any environment, is that it's all about who you know. And everybody gives that cliche, and it's totally true that it's all about who you know. Because
Yep.
one big thing I will say, and because this is another thing that they tried to push in these startups, is whenever they made these claims, whenever Gawker made these claims, a lot of times they would say, the rebuttals would be, well, our company is based on merit. It's about working hard, and so we just reward the best people that work the hardest. And
Oh,
I've been vociferous about that nonsense in the past, where people always talk about working hard, and
mm,
there's no evidence to show that working hard is how they got there. And if anything, it was just that it happened.
yeah.
And so then that became the other agenda they were fighting against, is they were trying to destroy everybody that said they were a meritocracy. And it just so happened that there was a nice little intersection of companies that didn't have a lot of women and minorities and companies that perpetuated the myth of the meritocracy, and so they would go at both ends, attacking both ideals or both dynamics. And so in the case of there are not enough women, they would always just show the charts of, well, of the companies who actually report, because what would happen is that Yahoo, Google, those companies, they didn't want to report what their numbers look like. They didn't want to they didn't want to report how many people in these positions had. And so even though people, people kind of scoff, well, they don't kind of, they do scoff at Gawker. They don't treat them as serious. Valleywag had a little bit more of a pull in that, and from what I've seen, there's kind of this unspoken awareness that, at least in the valley and in the San Francisco area, that people kind of know, they kind of acknowledge that there's this it's a phony environment, and there's a lot of unspoken rules, because the nearest town to me, or nearest city that has that same kind of attitude, is it, and it's very similar, and surprise surprise, it's also a startup town, and it's also one that is delusional about the reality of things. They say, oh well, we're a diverse place, everybody can do anything, but then they want to complain. Then you have councilmen, brilliant councilmen, who want to ban barbecue joints that have been there longer than they have
Oh
from
wow.
emitting smoke, because it's making them uncomfortable when they're outside. And so they want to ban the emission of smoke from barbecue joints altogether from the city.
That's wonderful.
And so, that's a big thing. And so whenever they would put all this data up saying, well, here's the percentage of all of women and minorities who all
Uh-huh.
work in this place, or who are majoring in computer science, they never ask the question of of what is making these people leave.
Yeah,
Why are they
yeah.
leaving?
I mean, I'm not gonna say that there's probably, that there's never ever a problem with people having a bias towards certain types or certain genders or certain races, but at the same time, they're always making it out to be about prejudice when I don't know if you can really prove one way or the other that, the people that you want to see there are actually out there applying for the job, or they're actually, the so-called best person with the proper experience, or even though we know that sometimes experience doesn't matter at all.
Right, because for a lot of people, it's internalized. You'll have a lot of people that say, "I don't think I'm good enough for Google. I've heard they've had a rigorous process, and I don't think I'd be cut out for it because I don't memorize a bunch of things." You have other people who might be more experienced, and they say, "I don't really want to go through the gauntlet of what it's like to work at Google." And then on top of that, yeah, they say they pay, $150,000 a year, but one, that's relative to the locale, so that might not be that much money in the long run. And then the other part to that is, you're going to work a lot of hours. They designed it so that you spend a lot of time there, so that you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to run somewhere to go to a doctor's appointment. There's a doctor on site.
That's
There's a
insane.
clinic on site. You don't have to go out to eat. There are restaurants inside. And that's not the only place. And Amazon is that way as well, but Amazon's only slightly different in that, I think a lot of those places, they cater lunches, or they pay for the lunch, and Amazon has this reputation for not paying for anything. If the cheaper you can be, the better. And so that's definitely the way that they operate there. But they all they all do these things, and some people are, intimidated by that, and then other people uh, just say, well, I have experience and I don't really care for that environment. Then you have other people, I'm sure if I went and I asked, the average black person, do you want to work in this type of environment where they do this and they do this, they'd probably say no. Like that doesn't sound interesting. That sounds like, oh, they either look at it as, oh, they're trying to get me to work longer, or that kind of stuff doesn't really interest me. I like this and this and this, and it doesn't sound like they have anything like that. So I don't want to work at a place that doesn't have the things I'm interested in. And as far as why they might change majors, it could be a variety of reasons. It could be, they don't really teach anything in computer science, and so they say, oh, that's not helping. Or
Yeah, they just look at the like the bare minimum, but then they don't take into account any of the other factors that may be a cause.
right, they don't look at the cause of the disparity. They just say there's a disparity that's there, and that's a big problem. But when it comes to Gawker Media, that's expected. And while they might not want to look too deeply into the disparity of why this is happening, they will certainly make things out of nothing. When it certainly is convenient for them. And that is the one thing I wanted to talk about today. So I played a game that I've enjoyed much throughout my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
Kirby's Dream Land 2. For anybody that's looked at the channel, we played Kirby's Dream Land 3 maybe a month or so ago, and that was actually the first time I played it all the way through. But
Yeah,
I
I've never
played
played that before.
I played the prequel hundreds of times. When I was a kid, I didn't own it. I borrowed it from some friends, and they were like, "Oh, well, if you get all of the rainbow drops, you can get the rainbow sword, and you get to fight an extra final boss, and you get to use the rainbow sword against them. So you got to make sure you collect it." So I remember, and it's on the Super Game Boy. So because I said, "Well, I have a Game Boy," and it says, "Well, you got to play it on the Super Game Boy. It has it has color in it, and it
Yeah,
has the Super Game Boy." Um, theme. It has its own personal Super Game Boy theme. So here, borrow my Super Game Boy and Kirby's Dream Land 2. And so I was hooked on the game. I remember as a kid, this was right before it was convenient to get the internet, and so I didn't have it quite yet. And so you had to kind of just figure out how to get the rainbow drops on your own. And I remember getting those things and getting the rainbow sword and fighting the last boss. And so but recently I finally bought the game 2 years ago or so, and I realized that you needed to do a little bit more than that to get 100% in the game. And so one of those things is you have to you remember the girl that we found that was wearing like a Chang Sam, like she was wearing like a kung fu outfit.
yep.
So you have to find her in the game, and she kind of shows up randomly. So the problem is that no walkthrough really tells you anything. It doesn't tell you to find the girl. So I had to go to IGN of all places to find it. But when I was doing my searching for it, I saw Kotaku because I did Kirby's Dream Land 2, girl, and that was my search, and Kotaku appeared, and and so I was like, okay, well, let's see. Maybe Kotaku. I doubt it, but maybe they're actually going to have some knowledge,
Some video game information for once.
right? Maybe they're actually going to talk about the game here, and they're not going to turn it into something else. And so, uh, against my better or my common sense, I see a title that says "The Hidden Naked Quote Lady of Kirby 2."
Oh, and it's like the way the platforms are built in the background and stuff.
Yeah,
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
and I didn't notice it. I clicked in, and the first thing I see is that picture. And I just remember just turning around, stopping, and saying I should have known better. And sure enough, all it is it's these blocks that look like they might be a lady, and of course they have to. There's not a real article here. It's two paragraphs, which combined, if you combine the paragraphs, it is a grand total of what four, well, five sentences if you count ooh la la as a sentence.
Let's. There we go. Hidden Naked Lady of Kirby 2. Here it is. Yeah, I've seen this before. And then, of course, they link to a video.
Yeah, of somebody playing with the Super Game Boy.
Yeah. What? Yeah, I just don't understand how this is news, and it's interesting to me that they click or that they always add, videos from somebody else's YouTube channel, and then they're making money off of these clicks. Is that how does that work? I mean, that's somebody else's content they're using.
Yeah, I can't say that I know. Well, that's part of the other thing. If I look at the title, because this was written what 2012. When was it written? 2012, May
Actually, yeah,
21st.
it was actually May. That's interesting.
And so when did this person do it? He did it the day before, May 20th, 2012. And so this screenshot one is not only lifted from his page, and so all it looks like they did is they essentially, without relinking, they relinked content from a Japanese blog, so not even a Japanese newspaper or anything like that. They just went to a Japanese blog, and they probably did their, as evidenced by the fact that they only have 5 sentences. They only they only did a basic translation of the blog article itself.
I think this specific writer, if I'm not mistaken, lives in Japan.
That'd be interesting. The only problem is that unlike other websites where if you click on the author's name, it actually gives you information about them. You click on author's name on Kotaku, and all it leads to is
Yeah, it's got his Twitter handle, and that's about it. And
oh
then, yeah, let's see. That was not what I wanted to do. Oh wait, this is the wrong guy. Never mind. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, he it says he lives in, well, it could be false, but it says he lives in Osaka on his Twitter.
Oh, I reached the wrong Twitter. It took me
Yeah,
to some other guy that lived in Virginia Beach.
yeah, this is his is just Brian underscore Ashcraft.
Oh, that explains it because they don't have the underscore in the Kotaku thing.
What a surprise that they would not have something accurate there.
Yeah, really. Um, yeah, this is also the guy that recently did oh, the the Pikachu, the blow up Pikachu, the giant blow up Pikachu, saying that oh, this looks like like Pikachu has a vagina.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I think you might have done some DS video on him or so, where he wrote the article, or you did some other video, I want to say.
Um, yeah, I don't remember, to be honest. Oh, look here's I'm gonna read you a title, and you can guess who wrote it. The Witcher 3 lets you have sex on a unicorn.
Um, is that is that's either Tortilla or Hernandez?
It's Patricia Hernandez.
I figured. I just was surprised there wasn't anything about rape in it.
I wonder. I haven't gone that far. Oh, because rather than you know, writing her own article, she just writes a paragraph and talks about the Conan O'Brien review and
That's good.
and links to that.
That's good. That's basically all that site is. Is it just reblogs from it's basically just relinking, or it's a repository for linking to other content. And it's good to see even in 2012 these guys were not doing anything different from what they're doing today.
Oh, here's a good one. Why so many movies in Japan are based on manga and anime? Gee, I wonder.
Yeah, it's almost like imagine what it would be like if a lot of movies in the West were based off of comic books and cartoons.
Oh,
Good thing we don't do anything like that. Good thing there's no Avengers movie or anything like that that's come out recently.
But
or
instead
any.
of people enjoying it, they're talking about how problematic it was.
Of
Instead of
course,
continuing to enjoy it afterwards.
I think there was something else I saw that I was trying to remember if there was some game that used problematic or something. Maybe the walkthrough did, but in context it was problematic. But it was just funny because it also could have been taken out of context to mean the problematic that problematic means today, which means nothing. Basically, it can be offensive, but it's okay because if you acknowledge it, then it's okay.
Uh, I still don't understand why even bother.
I just didn't realize that was such a prominent term to say that things are problematic.
It's
Like I
new.
thought,
It caught on, I guess.
like I knew that okay, maybe one person says it, but then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, this is going to be problematic, and then it gets worse when they say, oh, it's problematic, but as long as you acknowledge it, it's okay.
Apparently, they Nathan Grayson, of course, did some. He seems to be the writer for the drama articles, the internet drama articles. It seems like for some reason they've chosen the Zoe Post guy.
That should be his new name, the Zoe Post guy.
I think. Well, they'll probably think I'm referring to the guy that wrote it, but
I don't even remember who.
it's
Yeah,
like Aaron Ganji or something. I don't know how to say his last name. Hackers MMO character publicly stripped, killed, and banned. I'm surprised they haven't turned this into some kind of virtual rape scenario.
yeah. I think it might need a couple of months before, and then they'll just bring it up as if it was always that was always the way that they presented it. Like, remember this thing that we thought was rape? And then it links to the article, and it's like, okay, you don't mention anything about it unless it says edited, and then you say, okay, they just added that so that they can say, oh well, yep, we said it was rape related before. It was contributing to rape culture.
He's like he's trying to start a discussion with the article like, "Oh, do you think the creators went too far in what they did for punishing the hacker?" It's like, "No, who cares? What, the guy cheated and they took action."
So now is he trying to reduce it to like what YouTube content creators do, or they say, what do you think? Write in the comments below. Is that another way for them to determine the type of traffic they get? Does that help boost their numbers so that since I believe that they work off some kind of commission base off of site traffic, is that a like a bonus for them? They can say, oh well, I got 200 comments, uh, and so I think I could get a bonus for that. So hook me up, Nick Denton.
Oh, somebody I saw a tweet screenshot today from one of the other Kotaku writers, and it was just one of the dumb articles they wrote, and it was basically like why an Xbox 360 game is stuck to my ceiling. And I don't know how accurate it was, but the description of the tweet or of the screenshot was basically, "Oh yeah, he glued a video game to his ceiling to say he crushed a spider with it or something." So he could like write an article about it on Kotaku.
I'm glad that these guys have really been holding up to their promise to do good games journalism. That's really just a level of integrity that I don't
Oh,
think.
it's from today. Why there's an Xbox One game stuck to my ceiling. Yep. It's
I'm
so
sure I'm sure he showed that spider who's boss. If that spider were still around.
Yep, apparently it was the spider the size of a small Volkswagen on the ceiling directly over his head.
All I can say to that is these guys are clearly they're you know when the glass door reviews say that these guys are really pressed to make content all the time. I have to say that I can believe that with articles like this. I can believe that they're really pushing them to just post whatever they can.
Just how is this even allowed? I mean, I don't know. It's not even remotely funny. It's funny in the sense that it's so stupid that this should not be what this guy does for work, but all right.
I just have to wonder why they or how they think how they think about how they are going to create content. Like, are they sitting and thinking, my last check was too low and I'm going to get canned if I don't talk about something. So I just need to think of something. And it's like, oh, there's a spider. Well, I've got this game in my hand, so why don't I smash it with the game? And I was like, well, what if I could get it to stick to the wall?
Oh, well, apparently what he did is he sprayed the spider with glue spray,
Hmm.
and then on top of that, smashed it with the game case, and so now the case is stuck to the ceiling.
And so then it was like, okay, that's interesting. I didn't expect an adhesive to cause something to stick to a ceiling, but since it's happening,
How come there are no activists, here advocating for the life of the spider? Because, I mean, what did the spider do except walk across the ceiling?
but he's got like 10 paragraphs worth of stuff for this, but they can't seem to talk about, or they can't seem to put too much into the naked Kirby's Dream Land 2 lady. But I guess that has more to do with the fact that the content they stole, or the website they stole it from, didn't put too much in there other than the equivalent of putting like, oh, this game's too X-rated, LOL, OL, OL, OL. Since that, from what I saw from the title, that's what it looked like. It translated to, and so I guess they figured, okay, well, they didn't put much there, and we're not we're I got to put something out today, and the day's kind of starting off kind of slow. So let me go ahead and post this.
Well, PETA's response to that would probably be to just go and steal people's pet tarantulas and euthanize them.
Or be naked or something. That has something to do with fur, I guess, wearing fur, because a lot of people still wear fur.
Oh, I know I've seen it plenty of times.
Although apparently people were talking about on Sirius or satellite radio, they were talking about men wearing furs in New York. It was like the thing to do in the hip hop scene. And I can't even begin to describe how we got from men trying to be men to trying to wear furs now, and all the other things. But that's just me trying to go back to traditional gender roles, which is inappropriate. So it's offensive, and but now that I acknowledge that it's problematic, we can continue.
That is what's important. That's the most important thing.
The funny thing I noticed here is, while it seems like a lot of for whatever reason, the Gawker websites get a lot of traffic regardless of the fact that people shouldn't be viewing them. they get a lot of traffic, but the tech one, Valleywag, just it always just ends up like at this point it's pretty much just it's empty. Like the last couple of posts I saw, I know I saw like one of the front page posts is over Ellen Powell losing the gender discrimination suit, and that was what, March or April when that came in, or when that decision came in.
Right. Well, aren't they like talking shit about her now? Wasn't in the article because of Reddit and their racist subreddits or whatever?
Yeah, but they're talking about it on Gawker, which kind of makes that's kind of the other issue with Ballywag is it's redundant, because you've got IO9, you've got
There's way
you
too many. Deadspin.
yeah, you've got all of these tech oriented websites, and it was already at a point where back in the day they would would always say like Sam Biddle shared a post by, at the time, he would always share posts from Hamilton Nolan because Hamilton Nolan really wanted to push this agenda of Amazon is a horrible place to work, and he would always try to get, the dirt on from people to see what life at Amazon was like. And it's like, you don't really even need to do that. You just need to interview with them far enough to where you go to Seattle and you can see for yourself what it's like, and how much of a cult it is. You don't really need to go through all of this, but he would keep trying to find whatever he could to say, "Oh man, this is a terrible place to work." And it's like, well, it's kind of obvious at this point. You don't really even need to go that far anymore.
Coming from a guy that works for Gawker.
Exactly. And then that's the other thing. It's like, well, you can also do your research on them and you can see it's not that much better of a place to work. And one of the big things I see is that there's no sense of camaraderie or anything like that from other people. They just say, "Oh, well, I don't like, there's everybody, if you talk to them, they'll talk to you, but nobody's really out to nobody's really out to be, like comrades or partners with you. They're just kind of there to do their job and leave. And then there's always pressure to, pump and dump, and the pay system is,
That term.
well, in this case, it's accurate. But they're always just out to make a buck. And then if you look at like the Glassdoor interviews, and if we really did work for Gawker, this would be enough to make an article out of it. Because I think there was an article. It wasn't Valleywag, but they shared it from Valleywag, where it was literally on how Gawker writes articles, like their standards for writing articles.
Oh, I think I've seen that before.
I know it was by Max Reed because
Ugh.
the comment section. Well, if you don't know about him, I don't know if I could do enough justice to explain how much of a moron he is. But of course, he was trying to take the high ground as they always do, and trying to establish that he is superior and more intelligent than the commenters.
Yeah, I've seen. I feel like I may have even covered an article by him before.
I think you did, and then this one was you, and then the only reason it showed up is because Sam Biddle was sharing the post, and that's essentially what it's turned into now, is that you'll see, oh, Sam Biddle shared a post by Sam Biddle, which makes it even more hilarious. And so it's like nobody's writing anymore. There might be one main author. They tried to get a guy named Dan Lyons in Valleywag, and I haven't seen him post anything in months. And it was like the last thing he posted was something about somebody who works at Apple being chauffeured to work in a Bentley, and then the second to last article he wrote was about the fact that he wasn't able to write because he was sick and he was on a book tour. And you might be asking yourself at this point, who is Dan Lyons?
Yeah,
And
I'm not sure about him.
and
Sorry.
you don't have to worry because he's not anybody. But I believe it was a while ago, and let me see if I can pull up another article that explains it better than I could. But I believe he started a Twitter account called I think it was called Fake Steve Jobs.
Uh huh.
Let's see. Yeah, this guy, I think he can explain a little bit more about it. But yeah, he was basically, it was more or less he was like a troll account, and he he lasted for a little bit where he was trying to pretend he was Steve Jobs, and then I guess he was on this crusade about at least 3 years ago. He was on this crusade about going after prominent venture capitalists and whatnot in the San Francisco Bay Area, and so he's basically nobody. He's irrelevant. He's a guy that he makes his money by being a troll and writing about his trolling. So
Well, that must be nice.
why he's on a book tour, I don't know. But you have another comment when I guess you
Yeah,
when
yeah, I noticed. What is Manosphere? How would you describe Manosphere?
I actually have no idea. I can say I can answer the question as to what is a man.
Think it's
Uh,
another way of saying red pillar. So basically, terminology that doesn't mean a damn thing. Uh, I'm just being stupid with the title. We're not really focusing on that too much. I'm just making a joke about it thanks to all the wonderful comments in the section of one of my latest videos.
yeah, we actually kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but uh, we had to talk about naked women in Kirby's Dreamland too, and so we got away from passive aggressive communities of men who ask if they're stating their purpose or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't ask me what it is. I really don't know at this point.
I thought it was a pejorative term that feminists created though. I thought it was their way of saying, "Oh, well, that's that's the manosphere." I didn't.
That's what it should be, to be quite honest. But I mean, hey, whatever you want to label yourself these days. I personally couldn't take myself seriously if I was saying I'm in the manosphere. I'm from the manosphere. Join me in the manosphere. I guess I'm guessing that invitation I got to that is being revoked now.
Oh, probably if they looked at the video.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that guy was a subscriber or anything. I think he just came to like spam his Vimeo or whatever community.
That reminds me of the funny thing is the guy in that one comment was saying, "Oh, he was saying I think he said that he thought you were just doing this video just to attract attention.
Oh yeah, I
You're
remember
trying
that.
to drive traffic to your channel." And then when I called him out for his inability to move his finger one key to the left and use a period instead of a question mark, he assumed I was doing the same thing,
But how
and
does that even work?
I have no idea. But
Apparently, you making a comment on some unrelated thing is going to make people want to go to listen to Family Tracker music. I what?
exactly, I was like, did you bother to? Clearly, you did your research because you've looked at my channel because if you looked at it, you would see that my content is full of criticism against men going their own way and other men's rights activism. And not there's nothing at all. That you would look at and say, oh well, maybe he doesn't even talk about that. So yes, I would go to a video criticizing men going their own way to attract them to a channel that mostly has music on it.
Yeah, I don't even know how that was supposed to work for me, but I did think it was ironic that he was saying that I'm trying to attract attention to my channel on my own channel.
Right. And then the other piece of irony is that the only people that were trying to draw attention to other channels or advertising were they were the ones doing it.
Yeah, I had a guy. One of them came and he basically called me an idiot, and then he tried to post a link to his own video.
It's like, oh, this guy's stupid, and I have better insight on this, so go to my video.
It's like, all
Okay,
right, yeah, that's gonna hang around for a long time.
but we're the ones advertising. Like I didn't even link to my channel. Like
He
you have to actually click on my name to actually see what my channel's about.
he he stopped replying after I told him he was so smart and well researched because he told me I defended feminism, slavery, and war, and I was like, if you took 2 seconds to look at the rest of the videos, you would know how stupid you sound. But no.
And then he tries to end it by saying you are so easy, and I was like, is he trying to say, is he like slut shaming or something? Because I have no idea what that means.
Well, my problem is it is ridiculous because what like why do you need a label to make your own choices? Just be your own person. Who cares? Like I'm not going to fault everybody that uses the label to describe themselves. Whatever they want to do to makes them happy, fine, but to tell someone I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it and then follow what other people are telling you to do in order to live that lifestyle, that to me does not say I'm going my own way.
Yeah, that's actually identical to the comment we got. Yeah, it's weird how, at first the idea just sounds like, okay, these are at first when I saw the videos that you showed me, I figured that maybe it was just this little clique of people who they have adopted this particular mindset, and maybe it's not a common idea, or maybe it's just the people that subscribe to this guy
Mm-hmm.
who who are just parroting everything that he says. I mean, not that that makes it any better, but it's more expected to see, okay, here's a guy that makes content, and everybody else just blindly follows whatever he says. But it when it became more prevalent outside of just that guy, and you have other people saying, okay, well, the only way you can be MGTOW is if you can't go your own way unless you take our ideas and you follow what our ideology is. If you, like the other guy said, that he considers himself MGTOW based on some arbitrary definition, and I said, well, based on that definition, 10
That's
years ago I would have been similar. It wasn't that I was anti-relationship or anything like that. It was just that I didn't at the time I thought it was better to look internally and figure out what I need to do to be the best person I can do. And coincidentally, that was also the same time that when I started doing that, there were a bunch of people, a bunch of women that wanted to call me a misogynist. So basically, 10 years ago feels like it feels like, now that I look back at it, it feels like it's exactly what's happening now, but it was happening directly to me.
right.
Whereas now I'm kind of looking at it, but I have a distance from everything. But back then, I was directly impacted in it because I was giving off I wasn't giving the same attitudes that they were. I wasn't anti-marriage or anything, but I
Mm.
was I was but I was looking at things and I was saying, okay, 11 years ago, I'd gotten out of a bad relationship due primarily to that person's own self-esteem issues, which had nothing to do with me at all. That was she had those issues in spite of the fact that I was trying to tell her that her issues are unfounded, and she's letting somebody else kind of dictate how she should feel about herself. She's letting her mother, who was calling her ugly and butterface and all this other stuff,
Wow, that's
she's
pretty
she
terrible.
she's letting that she's internalizing that instead of just ignoring her and saying, okay, why am I going to listen to this overweight person that says I'm ugly when she can't even keep her hands off of some fried chicken or whatever. And so
Nice.
so after that, naturally I was hurt by the whole thing, and first I went through the whole maybe I can try to make it work out, and then, but at the same time, I knew 2 months later I was going to be moving away, far enough away to where if nothing happens now, then it's not going to happen anywhere else. And so
Right.
that's exactly what happened. And so there came a point where, you fast forward several months later to 2005, and I was saying, okay, I'm ready to put a break on everything, and I'm just going to figure out what I want to do. And one of the things that I came to the conclusion of is I was going everybody else's way. The I guess that's one of the reasons why the Dragon Ball episode sticks out so much to me, because, or the Walking Their Own Ways episode, is because that was also around the same time that I was watching that particular saga from Dragon Ball.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, okay, I've been doing what everybody else is doing, and I've been trying to fit this standard that I don't think that it's not me. I've been trying to do something based on what everybody thinks I should be, and so now I should stop doing that, and I should try to just figure out what's going to be right for me. And so I wasn't anti-relationship, anti-marriage, or anything. I just wasn't going to force it to happen anymore. If it did, it did, and if it didn't, it didn't. If it did, that's cool. If it doesn't, that's cool too.
Right.
Just whatever. Just do whatever until I can feel that I'm at a point where I'm mentally prepared for either marriage or for whatever I was going to do next, because I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I wanted to be prepared for any situation. And that was a big part of that experience, was also saying, hey, I'm doing my own thing and going my own way, remember? And I'm going alone. Some people, they're saying, I can't get with this, and you're not trying to do what I'm trying to do, so I can't be next to that. You if you want to do that, that's fine, but I'm not gonna participate in that. And also, a lot of it was, I was on my own, doing my own thing, and had to be comfortable with, if somebody says it has to be this way and everybody's forcing it, and I don't see that makes sense, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, I
And
mean, there's nothing wrong with that. As far as that part of the, what do you, I don't even know what to call it, label or movement or whatever. As far as that goes, I don't see a problem with that. But what what I was seeing a lot of was, okay, it's like, oh well, MGTOW is about this. But then you see a video titled "Women Are," what was that? I don't even remember what it was. Women are terrible or something.
hmm
And it's like, really, come on, that, what does that accomplish? It accomplishes nothing. It's like, for people that are going your own way and being individual and following your own path, you're sure worried about what somebody else is doing.
right. And then one of the other things I remember, or I guess the main reason that the whole misogyny or misogynist label came up, even though I wasn't even like a lot of those guys would say, oh, I forced myself to have sex with some woman because I had these urges and I needed to just get them out of the way, and so and so I had sex with them. But that wasn't the attitude that I had at the time. The attitude was, I want to be able to not let that not let that take over my mind, and have that kind of attitude. But at the same time, when I was looking at people who were getting into relationships, like a lot of guys, or a lot of people, guys and girls who like women, you get frustrated that, especially if it's somebody that you're interested in, and they go for somebody who is basically an idiot or a fool, and you say, why are they, it seems like every time I look, and I was 18, 19, so at that time it was okay, everybody wants to go for the bad boy, the person that
Yeah, and
can,
I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, you see that a lot.
it's like, hey, I'm coming up with a plan of what I want to do for the rest of my life and the kind of job I want to have, and they're interested in the guy who got the new Tims last week. They're wearing the new Timberlands, and they're calling everybody son because they're from the East Coast, or they're from New York, so what's good, son? And I don't have that. I don't talk like that all the time, and so and and so they're more interested in that. Or when I lived in Houston, everybody was with somebody, and so it felt like you were left out because it was just, and that in those times it was just me. So I can, after all of that happens, you get to a point where you say, okay, this is what everybody's going for, and that's not me. And that was around a point where I was comfortable with the fact that that's not me. So I'm saying, I'm not getting what I would think that I would get. Everybody always says they want somebody, a guy who's smart and who has a plan and can do this and isn't sorry, isn't irresponsible, and yet they're going for all these guys who don't have jobs, and they
Yeah,
mooch off of them, and they say, oh well, I went with him because I liked his car, or he had a nice car or something, like these shallow, superficial reasons. And so apparently the conclusion to draw from that is, oh, so you must be a misogynist then, because you are you're frustrated with the fact that people are making irresponsible decisions. And it's like, no, that's not it's not misogyny, it's just frustration with idiotic decisions.
yeah. I mean, that's just. I feel like that's just life. I mean, there's good guys, there's bad guys, there's good women, there's bad women. That's just the way it is. And then to say, oh, because of my personal experience, that means everybody of that opposite sex is rotten to the core and they're going to take you for all you're worth. And that seems crazy to me.
Right, and that's the whole problem, is that people will sit and they'll look at things anecdotally, and they'll say, because based on some anecdote, it's true, it's therefore universally true. I mean, it was just like that thing I mentioned in a few days ago, where you had that one feminist who, she was saying that women, men are always in power in tech industry, and they're always in control. And then you have this man who says, or she says, the women are always there just fetching coffee and organizing and scheduling meetings. And then a guy responds and he says, I schedule, or, my boss makes us schedule meetings all the time. And then she said, oh, well, you made some point there. I'm totally wrong in everything I said.
Oh, yeah,
And
she flipped out.
right, and he's like, well, you're just presenting anecdotal data, and I just gave you an example. My boss is a woman. She's a vice president in the company, and I have to do what she says because she's my boss. And so he says, tell me, and then explain to me how that works. And then she just goes off the deep end and basically says, well, just because you have a counter argument doesn't mean that what I said is valid. And what I said is, made a universal statement. And him being a math major, he says, well, in mathematics, a counter argument is valid to an argument. If you make a proposition, make a universal statement, or even an existential one,
Yeah,
and I can disprove it by giving you a counter example, then your statement isn't valid.
right. And
Because
why would one person's anecdotal example be more valid than another?
yeah, exactly. And you say you don't know, and at the same time, when I first saw that exchange, I had a boss at that time who was also female, and I had to do whatever it was she said. So I look at that and I say, okay, what you're saying doesn't seem realistic, because now you have two counter examples. So you can't make a universal statement that men are the only ones who are in leadership positions, because I just gave you an example of somebody who wasn't.
Right. And to touch upon the comments here, uh, ideology to have self control and create a better life for myself. I mean, see, somebody makes a statement like that, and I would say that, that's a respectable outlook to have. But when it comes to be like, I hate women and I have to lower myself to sleep with them, it's like, get out of here, man. You're just an idiot. Like, come on.
Right, like
That's too
self-control.
much.
Self-control is a great idea, and I think I know what you mean by self-control. But just to clarify, since apparently this is a thing, self-control does not mean we as men are trying to learn how not to rape women.
Right.
It simply means that we're not making we're not agreeing to have consensual sex that we might later regret for one reason or another. Whether it was just the person or our mindset was immature or something like that. So please, feminists, we're not talking about
Not
you don't
perpetuating
need to
rape culture.
right. You don't need to teach us not to rape. We know not to rape. So please do not add that to your top 10 lists of how to stop rape, which that apparently that exists, and one of them was like if you one of the top 10 ways to stop rape was if you see a woman whose car is broke down and you go there to help her, don't rape her.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I don't even. How is that? I mean, who with the in their right mind would even think that way? I mean, anybody that's thinking that is the type of person that's going to do it regardless of what you tell them.
Right, just saying, oh, well, don't rape, or like there was another one where it's like, well, have a friend come with you and give him or her a whistle so that if they think you're about to rape somebody, they can blow the whistle.
I just think that when it comes to labels, you're always going to find people that take it too far. So, to insult one person that is living under the label does not necessarily insult everybody or mean everybody that uses it, is a bad person. It's just that statistically, by human nature, there are bound to be assholes living under it.
Right, and the way things are going to be, some people aren't comfortable creating their own ideologies without somebody else creating it for them. So somebody might be tempted to say, I don't agree with the institution of marriage, but I can't articulate well why I don't agree with it. And so
Right.
then somebody else comes and they're more charismatic and they make a video about it and they say, okay, that person hit the nail on the head. They said everything I wanted to say.
Yeah, that
But
makes sense. There are a lot of people that don't or that aren't able to articulate what they may be feeling or thinking. So when they see something that could be considered insightful, they catch on to it and take it on as their own ideal.
but
Uh,
then they go too far and then they everything that person says they all of a sudden agree with. So even things they weren't thinking about, they're saying, oh well, okay, that person said it, so I agree with everything else that person says, so it must be valid. And to me that's a big problem, not just in that sense, but I'm a pretty vocal critic of the current academic system, and I guess that means you can call me anti-intellectual if you so desire. But that's one of the biggest things that I remember being frustrated with is that if a teacher or a professor and some kind of instructor says something, it therefore must be absolutely true and there's no questioning it. And that's the attitude that a lot of people take, and with for valid reason. They say, okay, this person is in a position where they're teaching and instructing others, so clearly they must have the ethical standards to be able to separate their opinion or their own ideology from the curriculum. So if they say something, it must be with absolute validity. So there's no way that they would say something and be dubious in what they say. And my problem with that is, especially as you get to the post-secondary level, to the college level, that becomes less and less true because they're less bounded by requirements of whatever school system to be objective, to they are permitted to express their own opinion on that based on the very nature of how the academic system works. I mean, they had to get their PhD based on them making an argument and defending it in that way. So they're permitted to make whatever opinion they want to make, and people being young and impressionable aren't exactly mature enough to be able to discern that person's opinion
from
from the truth. So they say something and people believe it, and then that's how you get certain professors like the one I mentioned earlier, who basically said that a woman having orgasm from a man is just a tool of the patriarchy, or
Uh,
it's just contributing to oppression, and you spread nonsense like that, and people will start to believe it, and then that's how you get this nonsense on Tumblr. So
there's plenty of that.
when stuff like that happens, it kind of works all these different ways. You have some people that will say, okay, clearly this system is out to get me because I don't agree with it. And then that's how they find things like MGTOW, because then they say, oh, these people agree with me, but they can articulate it better because they can provide pointed research on these topics, and they can really identify the issues that I don't do a good job of identifying it. Okay, I had to remember where Alberta was. I was really stupid. I was confusing it for something else. I'm actually not familiar with with any of the Canadian systems, but the last place in Canada I visited was Quebec. So that would be something I'd be more interested or more aware of, and I can say based on what I know about the education system there, I don't have the highest of hopes for their education system. The fact that they have basically a forced community college uh, attendance that they have to have. So, and it makes it really weird if you live in other parts of Canada and you want to go, or if you live in Quebec and you want to go to school in other parts of Canada, well, because you have to do CEGEP first, then you have to take these tests or something like that to prove that you don't need the extra year, because they basically stretch 12 years of school into 13 or 14, and it's
That
really,
sounds rather odd.
yeah, and their their political system is, yeah, nobody does, but ironically, that's where a lot of game development studios are. So I don't know how that. Well, I know how it happened. The same way any business happens. It's all through bribery and politics and corruption. But I don't know too much about. The only thing I know about Alberta is Canada's worst drivers. Somebody, what was her name? I know she was from Edmonton, and she was on that show, and she was one of those people that was a terrible driver because she liked to put makeup on and uh, while she was driving, and
And we all know what makeup means.
well, that's just what is it, oppressive beauty standards?
Well, yes, if that's the feminist side, and then the MRA side is that it means that a woman doesn't appreciate herself, so why should he have to?
The funny thing there is that I actually live in Texas, so um, I will say based on the what I understand of the oil industry, I guess I can see that comparison is apt. That because a lot of when I lived in Houston, that was one of the other areas, other big oil areas was Alberta, because they if they weren't doing it in Houston, they were doing it there. They were doing it in some oil producing nation. But the less guns, I wouldn't be surprised. They had an issue. The same time I was in Quebec, my parents were in Alberta, and they my dad has the same name as I do, and so that made it fun at immigration, because they were saying, well, somebody with that name came here 2 days ago,
That's interesting.
and he came into Montreal. So how did you come into Canada and then leave without getting checked off for leaving and then come back in? And even though I had specified that even though I had specified that that was going to happen, they still, apparently that's their thing in immigration, is they have to they have to talk to you like you've done something wrong, even if you haven't. So even though it makes all the sense in the world, they won't ask the question that they need to ask, which was basically social security number and date of birth.
Yeah,
If
that
they
seems
ask
simple
those,
enough to resolve.
but they asked all these other questions like how many times have you been to Canada, and where did you go the last time that you were there, and what did you do? They asked all these questions until they said, "Oh, well, you can go. The birthdays are different." Okay, that's why that should have been the first thing you looked at when you filled out the visa form. You have to put in your date of birth. You should have seen the the fact that the years were like 30 years apart. Of course, they're not the same person. Although if I were famous, that would have made an interesting Gawker article. Like, oh, he was traveling with two different women and with children. Is he living a double life? Like, that's top-notch research there. But I actually have to say that I never worked in that industry. I know a lot of people that did, but I did not work in oil and gas. I tried to avoid it because they had some interesting work policies when they try to contact me. The money's always great, but there was one place that wanted me to work from what is it, 7:30 to 3:30 at the other side of town, and all I was going to be doing was creating tags,
Oh wow, that sounds
like YouTube tags. That's all I was going to be doing.
really.
Yeah, and it was a temporary job, maybe 3 months at what was it, Chevron or no, it was Chevron Texaco, so it was Texaco.
I mean, it sounds easy, but 8 hours a day of that just tagging things would be kind of ridiculous.
Well, then it was on the other side of town, and I figured if I was going to do that, I can find something right around the corner. But then the other problem with that particular job is, since I was looking at the time I was looking for a full-time job, but then I got, I don't know, what, 20 to 30 phone calls and emails in one day for that same job.
Well, this is a patriarchy, so you can obviously say rape. That's why it decided to show up.
Right, rape culture is a real thing, so you can mention that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they were special. One of the favorite old websites I used to read, what, 13 years ago, Axe of Gord. He had some adventures there. Well, he was in British Columbia, and he had some interesting experiences trying to smuggle cherry coke from the states to British Columbia.
Typos are a okay with us.
Because people aren't perfect, despite what people want to believe. A 6 by 10. Well, at least
Shared showers. That doesn't sound like much fun.
I don't know. Maybe it's better than working on the offshore though. Offshore you get paid more, I've heard, but of course then you have to deal with things like the possibility of oil spills and explosions and
Yeah, dying. Why we need more women in that industry?
but hey, it's well paying. That's what you should say, but
Diversity.
they'll say I'd rather work in the desk. Say yeah, that's good until they lay everybody off because gas prices are going down. Then they'll say it's the patriarchy at work.
That seems to be the excuse for everything. I mean, I don't even know. We were looking at that other article, the fat article. I don't know how patriarchy is responsible for the society's view of fat people.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but apparently, if orgasms can be the patriarchy, certainly the fat shaming is.
I just like how that's the reason for everything. Even though nobody thinks highly of fat men, but whatever.
At least not, well, certain fat men. Oh, okay, inspector. Well, then that must be privilege. Then, if you're working as an inspector, because you're getting special treatment, which is funny because at my job I was not allowed. I was told they could not give me special treatment, which I did not ask for, but they were presumptuous in assuming that what I said I wanted was something that I wanted them to give me, and I did not want that at all. I was not asking that company to provide that because I knew they couldn't.
But do you know for sure that cats don't give consent? That's the real question. They probably have an app for that. Feline
Yeah,
frequency made it.
yeah. So I think if anybody knows about that, she's trying to resist the pup triarchy. So I'm sure your cats are not evil, but if they are, all you need to do is tell them not to do it, and that will get them to stop.
That's right. Teach cats not to rape 2015. Start the hashtag.
Yeah, it'll be just as good as the top 10 tips to end rape, which include don't put drugs in women's drinks. And when you see a woman walking by herself, leave her alone. And then there's the one I mentioned where the car is broken down. It says if you pull over to help a woman whose car is broken down, which I don't think should be allowed because a man shouldn't be helping a woman, uh, lest he be misogynist. But it says if that happens, remember not to rape her. It actually does say remember not to rape her.
It's actually kind of funny though because the feminists would be like, "Oh, that's he's a misogynist," but then on the other side, the angry men would be like, "You're a white knight." So which one is it?
Yeah, no way you can win. Now this one I have to translate because it's appears to be written in the Queen's English, so I will translate it. If you are in an elevator and a woman gets in, don't rape her. So all those elevator rapes,
I
if
better
only
stop
they,
now.
right, if only they had just told them not to do it, it wouldn't have happened. Never creep into a woman's home through an unlocked door or window, or spring out at her from parked cars, or rape her.
Is this real? I mean, this is really a legitimate list.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah, I like that it says never, creep into the door or spring out or rape her. That's one of the top 10 tips to end rape. And then it says use the buddy system. If you are not able to stop yourself from assaulting people, ask a friend to stay with you while you are in public.
But isn't this some of these suggestions oppressive because it's telling the victim what they can do in order not to be raped?
Right, it's
I mean, preparation is never a good thing. You should just expect the world to be a perfect place and nobody ever will harm you.
exactly because it could be triggering to think that you could go out somewhere and somebody could do something. And then it says, don't forget, it's not sex with somebody who's asleep or unconscious, it's rape, and rape's in all caps. Number 8 is carry a whistle. If you are worried you might assault someone, quote unquote, by accident, it's actually in quotations, you can hand it to the person you're with so they can call for help.
You can accidentally assault someone, or did I
Well,
or did I misinterpret that?
yeah, I guess, yeah, I guess you can sexually assault by accident. You can accidentally rape somebody. I mean, I can see how it could
it
assault somebody by accident, like if you're drunk driving and you do Grand Theft Auto style and you drive on the sidewalk and hit somebody, but it doesn't look like that's what they're talking about because uh, in that case, I don't think a whistle's going to do much. So I assume they mean you can rape somebody by accident, which I
Wow, I don't know how that's possible.
and the number 9 is the longest. It says, "Don't forget, honesty is the best policy. If you have every intention of having sex later on with the woman you're dating, I think that's woman and not women, regardless of how she feels about it, tell her directly that there is every chance you will rape her. If you don't communicate your intention, she may take it as a sign that you do not plan to rape her and inadvertently feel safe." And the number 10 is the best. Don't rape.
Oh wow. Well, they could have just skipped the whole list and just used that one.
Well, remember, there's already number 5 already says never creep into a woman's door, window, or spring out at her or rape her. So that's really number 5 and number 10 are the same thing because it says never rape her or don't rape. And then the reply to it was, "This is probably the best thing ever. Why don't we teach this to young boys?"
Wow. I The only way they should be saying this is the best thing ever in reference to that, as if it's sarcastic.
I don't know where this is from, but it looks like it came from Tumblr, so
Oh, that's not surprising at all.
I don't know what it is in the background because the background's cut off, but it looks like a marijuana leaf.
It's one of those legalize it blogs.
Yeah, I'm sure it is one of those normal blogs. And then somebody actually replied to it, and they had the picture of Dora the Explorer and Swiper instead of him being Swiper, he's
Raper,
Rapers.
yeah.
Yeah,
Raper, no raping. Oh,
because apparently that's really the only reason that rape exists is because people just they were just ignorant to the fact that it was rape. It has nothing to do with the fact that they want to overpower and dehumanize the person, which means it's deliberate. But I mean, nowadays apparently consensual sex is rape, and where does it
or you
say?
could change your mind later on. Like you could decide, oh, that's what I want to do, and then a week later, oh, I decided I didn't really want to do that.
Yeah, where's the? I'm trying to look at the one. Yeah, the oil industry is pretty bad from what I've heard. But so is the software industry. But you can listen to the earlier part of the podcast for that one. Uh, Here's another one about rape. All sex, even consensual sex between a married couple, is an act of violence perpetrated against a woman.
Where where are you seeing all these wonderful quotes?
This is from well, it's from my favorite feminist Twitter account.
Oh, the feminist bullshit.
Yeah, the top 10 rape tips should be first up there, but uh, the other one about the consensual sex is violence against a woman is further down. But that's also the same. Uh, it's a list of quotes in that one, and that's the same list. That's the same list that has the one from the woman that says a woman reaching an orgasm with a man is only collaborating with the patriarchal system, eroticizing her own oppression.
Oh my god. I like this Jabba the Hutt Photoshop. It actually kind of looks like the woman in the Avatar.
Oh, I just thought that she had taken a picture of movie Bob.
Wow.
It'll be funny the day that they actually have to make a law that actually defines what yes and what no means. Because I think they also said that Domino's was promoting rape culture.
Oh yeah, yeah, I heard that, but I forgot what it was that they said.
I think they said it's like because no means yes or something.
Probably.
Because they were saying no, it was back when they had that campaign where they had the artisan pizzas and you couldn't add any toppings or remove any,
Isn't
and
that what they
so
just got pissed at Bud Light for or whatever? Some kind
probably.
of.
But yeah, I never read the other things because I thought the orgasm one was really the top tier of the quotes. The woman who said this, Sheila Jeffries, I believe, is a political science professor at a university in Australia, and I thought it was interesting that she says when a woman reaches an orgasm with a man, and so I was like, well, why would she stipulate that it's only with a man and not just say orgasms in general are oppressive? And then I looked at her and I looked at her profile and it said that she was a lesbian feminist, and so then I said, okay, then I now understand. So if a woman reaches an orgasm with another man or with another woman, it's acceptable, but if it's with a man, it's oppressive.
That makes no sense at all, but alright.
Well, I think you'll be able to see if she's brainwashed by this weird version of feminism if she goes on Tumblr, or if one of her friends on Tumblr says that she her says that she has a friend who says her boyfriend is great, and she responds on something about did she check to see if he was problematic first? But then they say some other things like basically a man is is either a domestic animal or a machine. He's a walking dildo. The other thing is that every woman's son is her potential betrayer and also inevitable rapist or exploiter of another woman.
Oh my god, wait, stop using the word tropical?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
And I like how they wouldn't even write the word tropical. They use the asterisk to replace the O.
like that's somehow less offensive because you know what the word is.
Yeah. I was going to make a 50 Shades of Grey joke in there, too.
Yeah, but you'll have to go to what I guess what was it our Kirby's one of our Kirby Superstar streams for those jokes.
Oh, yeah. Extremely problematic. There's a place around here called Tropical Smoothie.
You better tell them to take the O out.
Yeah, we're going to have to replace it with a giant flashing asterisk.
Unless it's triggering. And then yeah, the post, the Tumblr post, the that awkward bye moment was a pretty good one. Where they said it's an awkward bye moment when you want to add in the reductive framework of heteronormativity at the end of other sentences. Oops.
Heteronormativity. Where do they even get these things?
Who coins these terms?
Actually, I feel like I looked up where that one came from, but I
I
don't remember.
it might have been in one of your early deconstructing
I think it was
videos.
like episode 3 or 4 or something.
Yeah, because people are getting mad that they do that for babies or something. And I didn't realize that that life is an RPG, but racism is a totally completely optional side quest for white people. So, and if life was Chrono Trigger, this would be one of the things you could do before you get to Lavos. You could you could learn about racism, or you could save the world.
The fated hour, indeed.
Yeah, that now that really hits home.
Oh, there's the optional side quest thing. Wow. I like that it has 65,428 notes.
I nobody ever said Tumblr was full of Nobel laureates.
Oh, I mean, I do have to wonder how many of those are in agreement. Probably a lot, since it's Tumblr.
Yeah, like the one where it was two dogs on top of each other, and it clearly looked like one dog was smaller than the other, as though the smaller dog was probably a puppy. And they were talking about, I hope that they're not forcing this to be a heterosexual relationship, and so I hope it's either two female dogs or two male dogs, because that would be really messed up uh, if they if they forced heteronormativity on them, and it took like several comments for somebody to finally say it actually looks like a puppy laying on top of her mother.
They'll twist anything into something weird.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to talk about how the new are or the way that they people treated the new and Chrono Trigger just means that they were transphobic because they only use them to get items. Because you never know if the new has a particular gender,
That's
so
true.
you don't know what it identifies as.
Perhaps new is its preferred pronoun.
Yeah, maybe that's what it means, and so maybe that's what they're on when they said all life uh, begins with new and ends with new. Maybe they were saying it's all about personal pronouns. Yeah, I think everybody's mind is blown after that one. Yeah, I used to make that argument as a kid. Like even dogs, dogs can get along with each other, and then, or actually, my dad made that point. I said, dogs don't have racism, or they're not racist toward each other. But he said, yeah, but then dogs just don't like other dogs. So, it's a animalistic trait to just not like something else in your group for something else in your species for some arbitrary reason.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that happens all the time.
Like like other people in Texas wouldn't like me because of where I live in Texas. Same thing with New York. They say, "Oh well, you're technically from upstate, and so you're not as important as
If you were from the
me."
city,
Yeah,
because that means something.
and then vice versa. It's like, hey, where I live, we had rivers and they were clean, or and mountains, and where you live, they had nothing and it was grimy and people pee all over the place.
I like this one right here. I hate straight people. They shouldn't exist.
Yeah, that was a good one. I
Thus
was
erasing their own existence because without a straight couple to bring them into the world, game over.
maybe that's what it is. He's committing genocide.
Creating a time paradox.
Maybe he's on to something there. And then I also see that this person also had to say something about the image that somebody made that Feminist Frequency retweeted. The one where it was like it was the four women, and it was saying feminism is not really all about choice. Because it
Oh,
has,
I remember. Yeah, that was a terrible comic thing.
yeah, it was like they really ham-fisted the context or the excuses that they made for why. Well, to be fair, most people in Louisiana don't like people that are darker skinned in Louisiana. I remember somebody used to tell me that I think they said there were there were either Creole or Cajun black, and they were trying to whiten themselves as much as possible. So what they would do is they would inbreed, they would commit incest, so that they would not have darker skinned children.
Wow.
But when you live in the swamp, I guess things happen to your brain cells. So to them, that probably makes sense to do that. But I don't think I would want to participate in that. But the worst
No,
thing,
but it's
the
pretty messed up that people have to resort to such things, I guess, or think they have to.
oh man, I forgot all about this. The where people said that homosexuality is just patriarchy.
Yeah,
Says gay marriage is literally about getting women murdered. Why isn't it okay to talk seriously about this?
yeah. I don't understand how you even wow come up with that. What does it have to do with murdering women?
I don't know. But what does anything have to
I'm
do with anything?
I'm pretty sure gay men don't that want to get gay married don't care about women.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty safe bet that they're not all that worried about it. But then again, what do I know? I'm
But
I'm a
not
guy from upstate New York, remember? So,
not worrying about it is probably part of patriarchy too.
but it isn't misogyny, that woman that said boobs legit. She has so much power over males, and even though objectification of women is terrible, her breasts will get her anything she wants, and she loves it. She's not saying she's a prostitute. She just manipulates teenage boys, and they get so wound up over nothing, and she's a goddess and praise her. Then she complains that she's sick of guys,
Sexualizing her or
yeah,
something.
treating her like she's an object and
Even
she
though
doesn't have feelings. And
even though she treated herself that way. But no need for personal responsibility.
no, you can just blame it on somebody else. That's the way to go. Yeah, it's weird how much this Twitter feed provides
It's
in terms of.
crazy. It's very good.
Yeah, here's the one I had where it was the domestic abuse hotline, and it was the one where if it's a woman that's feeling she's abused, call this number, and then for men it was if you feel that you're going to abuse, then you need to call this number.
Oh.
Not if you're a victim of abuse, simply if you're concerned about becoming abusive. And
Yeah.
that's a government agency, Australian government agency, but a government agency uh, nonetheless.
That is pretty crazy.
And then the complaints that people are not biologically male or female. Biology apparently is.
But no, I don't see anybody complaining about this being a standard where it's just
Oh,
expected that the male would be the abuser.
yeah, that's actually something I'm surprised I wouldn't see from MGTOW or something like that, where they would say, these people are treating us like we're just inherently going to rape and to abuse.
I think that is a concern from the more moderate, but I don't know if they're actually, you know, taking steps to help fix that or just kind of acknowledging it and then going on their way.
Well, I don't know if like the ex Paladoc or whatever his name is, he doesn't seem to be interested in talking about that.
Oh, yeah.
He just wants to interview like like young girls don't who haven't experienced life long enough to.
Really have a good opinion on anything.
Yeah, or guys who are like, well, I'm just going to have lots of sex, and that's going to solve all of my problems. Like, yes, it sure will. You're showing that you're going your own way by doing that. I'm glad that you were able to demonstrate thinking for yourself.
Uh, the whole free thinking thing in general is just kind of a lie, I think.
I mean, I suppose it could be it could have been a real thing, but I mean, at this point, like I said before, it's somebody else has to say it for then somebody to say, "Oh, well, I'm this."
Yeah, I thought he might be decent, but I had a couple of. I commented on a couple of videos, and let's just say things got a little weird.
Yeah, well, at least he didn't invite you to a Google Hangout.
To save my life. The guy that he invited subscribed to my channel.
I didn't know he subscribed. I know he commented on the video, but I didn't know he subscribed.
Yeah, he's been for uh, maybe a week or two. I'm not sure exactly. I always forget.
I just thought it was interesting because he didn't seem like a guy who was really even passing judgment. It sounded like he really agreed with him, and
Yeah, he seemed to just kind of be
I
saying
actually
what
have.
it 2 weeks.
I don't
Yeah.
think I don't think I've actually seen too many of her videos, but I do remember that one about the disposable men. I only remember the title. I don't remember the content in it, but uh, that's certainly the way that I feel that they're trying to behave.
Well, yeah, I see the. I feel like I might have saw part of that video. I'm not sure. I can't remember to be honest. I don't really watch uh, any honey badger content to be honest.
I don't either. It's just I knew about her for years. I mean, I think at any point, yes, if because of the influence that power has, that rape is an inevitable thing because rape is all about power, and I think that's a big thing about what people forget is that at least that's what I always remember hearing is it never is about sex. It's always about rape. It's always about power. And
Right.
so when people are trying to say you can teach it as though, people they're inherently geared towards that, it's obvious that at this point they're trying to confuse sex with just being rape and because they want to throw consent out the door altogether. I actually haven't seen any of the. I don't know who all is part of that group because I try not to.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of stay clear of it too. But I do know that the latest thing is that whole
In
situation where
Calgary.
where they got kicked out of the expo, and there was some kind of fundraiser for legal fees or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the only reason I know about that is because of Mark Wade and him being annoying, and the fact that people who were just insulting his work on a comic book, he wanted to label them as Gamergator types so that he could easily just have people immediately run to his defense. And that's where I found that guy that said that you don't know how polls work.
Oh wow, that was a good comment.
I like that he says that, but then he doesn't even bother to attempt to educate by saying, here's how polls work. He just says, oh, you still don't know how polls work.
Apparently, it's not voting and then comparing the numbers.
Yeah, that's just oppressive. I still don't know how that works out, other than the fact that somebody probably told them that this person has to be nominated. Like I feel that they probably said that from the beginning. They said this person has to be nominated.
Yeah, they probably put her in just because they knew of the controversy that was going around and that it would get them attention. Negative or positive, it doesn't matter, I'm sure.
Right, because person of the year doesn't have to be a positive person. It just has to be a person of either notoriety or celebration or who's lauded to be on that list. Although they've chosen some asinine people before. They chose Mark Zuckerberg one year, so
Yes, thank the world for, Facebook is so important, I guess.
yeah, that guy's really changing the world, which all those startup founders say, we're changing the world with our app that lets you order premium takeout
I
and
mean,
like all
it's a convenience, but we could live without it.
but no, they make it seem like they're really, they are on par. They view it as like it's social justice. Like this will change the way that we as human beings treat each other.
Yeah, as in a bigger sense of entitlement.
It's like our iPhone app will do that. So the human race will improve with an application that is limited to a particular user base. So if you use Android or Windows Phone or some basic phone, who cares? You're
You're
not
on your
even
own.
human. I suppose they are because they would have to inherently be sexist if you think about it because they're saying I was born this sex and put into this gender and I want to be this gender or I feel like I'm this gender, but they're basing that off of arbitrary feelings. And so what they're saying is you could construe it as they're being sexist against men because they're saying well or feet or women because they're saying I identify more with this and therefore it's not reasonable to assume that the gender that I've been categorized as can handle the feelings I have, and so it might be a might not be an accepted argument, but it's an argument you can make.
I'm sure somebody probably has made it somewhere out there.
I'm sure many more people got offended instead.
Probably.
Because I mean, there were some people who are comfortable enough with being a man, but they just like to wear feminine clothing and vice versa. I mean, back in the days, if it was like a girl doing that, you called that a tom girl. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of time, that's kind of the other thing that a lot of people don't ever really fully acknowledge is that sometimes it can be, for some people, it can just be a it can be a phase. It's not something that is a permanent.
Like the 3-year-olds that I forgot what news show it was on or something, but they were basically demanding like, "Oh, take your 3-year-old seriously when they say that they feel like they're a boy and they're actually a girl." It's like, yeah, let's let them make very important decisions about their life before they even understand anything about life.
Right. Like who's to say they won't regret that anyway? No, I haven't even heard of that video
I
where
have not heard of that either.
I have heard of a show where there was a pregnant man who was a transgender woman.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I did hear about that. I have
And
a
that was
feeling that chat on YouTube doesn't allow links, so you probably have to like break it up somehow so that you could piece it back together.
we should have asked what his point was. That's what you're supposed to do.
State your purpose.
Or state your purpose, since it was always a
That really
question.
does, yeah, that really does sound like some old Nintendo game dialogue.
Well, the typos didn't help either. Like the thing he was trying to say about you and grammar, or the thing that made me chime into the conversation because he was talking about you and grammar counts, but he had everything as a question mark, and the first thing he said didn't make sense because it says something like when we ask you something.
Yeah,
So I don't.
I didn't understand even half of what he was saying.
But that didn't stop them from giving your video a thumbs down.
I think a lot of people did without even commenting. They just saw the title and they're like, "Yeah, this is offending me."
But what if it were like, oh, it's MGTOW stupidity, but it's like people that were criticizing MGTOW, and you're like, oh, these people are stupid.
It very well could have been that. So for some reason, I did get this comment earlier, and for some, I can't seem to reply to it no matter what I do. I mean, I can hit the reply button, but it doesn't take the reply. Everything else I can reply to except for this. But it's straw man much. I was just gonna write Tin Man much because
I
I'm
was
tired of like humoring people.
I was about to say, wasn't that a thing that was happening where people were disabling replies to their
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure, but the reply button wasn't even there
yeah,
when.
but whenever you show me like people who won't let you reply to their things, that's the way it shows up for me, is that there's just no reply button.
Oh, yeah, there's a reply button in this case. That's what's weird to me. But and it'll open up and let me type, but when I actually click the submit button, it just doesn't work. That's quite alright.
I'm trying to figure out though what some of these comments are, like the person that says, "What do you need?"
Oh, yeah, I didn't understand that either. I think it's people that are not native English speakers. I feel like that Vulcan guy is like German or something, judging from his channel page.
That's possible, but from the brief amount of German I studied, the way they use question marks are identical to the way that we use question marks. So that
Yeah, I
doesn't
mean, it
excuse.
doesn't excuse what he's doing, but the way he speaks seems to be a little bit of broken English. I don't know if it's probably not politically correct to say that anymore, but
But I figured as much. But if you're gonna make that move, you don't get a pass just because, oh well, it's not your native language.
yeah, but you're certainly trying to start a fight in it.
Right, like I call people idiots in the other language I know all the time. Sometimes I do it in English too because they did their videos in English, but I demonstrated my knowledge of what's going on in their country. So, like there was one guy, you remember the reviewing a reviewer videos?
Yep.
There was a guy who I guess he was from Brazil and he was always insulting Americans and making these stupid generalizations. And he was talking about how backwards it was, and I was like, yeah, he's probably the last person that wants to do that, given that Brazil has it's there's this big scandal that they're still talking about where a good amount of the people who were part of the federal government were exposed for this. I think it was like they were getting monthly payments or something from some businesses in order to, and they were get for preferential treatment, so basically bribes. Uh, and it got so many people, like so many people were caught and indicted and sentenced for the crime, but their punishment is basically a slap on the wrist. Like one guy gets to he's imprisoned, he's in a federal prison I think, but he still gets to work. So he gets to work at this hotel, and by law he can only get paid a certain amount, but he still gets to work at the hotel as like a president or something, like a really high ranking job. So he's not just some guy who's like, oh, I'm gonna clean up the hotel rooms or something. He's a guy that's actually making decisions
Oh
while
wow.
he's incarcerated.
Did you
And
get
it's
that
like,
from a book?
yeah, of course. While I was yelling at children in the middle of hallway in my apartment complex. But then like he's also like the other thing that I was saying is it was an election year I think at the time, and so I was saying, oh, people aren't happy with the president, and the president's a woman, so you can't be unhappy with a woman, so that's sexism and misogyny right there.
Oh God.
And the comments that all the people were making, um, like they were saying that I think they were saying revenue for the country was at an all-time high, and because it was at an all-time high they need to raise the tax rate or something like that, and or that's what people were saying. I was like, oh yep, you're really in a position to insult America. You In Brazil there are no political problems at all, none at all. There's no corruption. There's no backwards policies or anything.
I'd like to find a perfect place like that.
But of course, I guess he was also hoping that you know whoever watched his videos can't read Portuguese and therefore can't look and see what problems are going on. Like there was another, well, the World Cup, soccer football World Cup last year was in Brazil, and there were a lot of people complaining at the time. They were complaining before the World Cup even started about how obviously you can guess what the complaints were. The government put all this money to build this stadium or renovate this stadium and get it ready for the World Cup, and yet here we are still starving on the street. They can't help us out, but they can give lots of money to FIFA so that they can host the World Cup in some place. And then there was an issue with either it wasn't police brutality, it was just rampant crime in a certain area of Brazil, and then I think it did eventually turn into police brutality because they were just shooting people just wanton murdering. And this is the same guy that's like, oh yeah, you stupid Americans are backwards because of your opinions on same-sex marriage and all these other things. And it's like, yes, while you live in a country where uh, you know criminals are in control, and they're shooting police officers, and then police officers are just going and killing anybody, and they're funneling more money to the World Cup than they are to their own citizens. And you've got,
Couldn't you
yeah,
really say that about any sport anywhere?
exact exactly. And then you had the penis sandwiches. I don't know if you remember that.
No, that does not ring a bell.
There was a somewhat of a scandal at a Burger King in Brazil because I think they were ordering a chicken sandwich, and the guy just decided to just slap his penis in between the bread.
Oh, nice.
And then they had like a little water tower or something, and then they were all having a bath. They're taking a bath in the water tower or water tank in the sink. And so people were, I think somebody was in their apartment and they saw it, so they filmed them and uploaded it to YouTube, and people were mad because, and then other people said, and yeah, we're the same country that's getting the World Cup, and things like this are happening. And then of course people weren't happy because you can't talk about football negatively. That's why when people are like, when I say I don't like American or North American football, and then people are like, oh yeah, these other sports are better, and I'm like, no, I hate soccer just as much because, yeah, if I want to be totally honest, they're no different. Like the way that people obsessed over football here is the way that they obsess over soccer in the same way, and it's the same mentality. If you're a good football player, they'll try to give you whatever you can get,
Right. Yeah,
and
there's.
same thing with soccer. So I think we hit the 3 hour mark, and I wanted to stop at at 3 hours. So
Yeah, I was just about to say wrap it up pretty soon. So I guess we found a good ending point.
yeah, and football's a good way to end any conversation.
And Super Bowl or World Cup, depending on where you're from.
Yep. So I guess this is thank everybody for going to, well, the first Scratchcast. This isn't my first podcast. It was the first podcast I've done, or first Scratchcast we've done. So
Yes, first official podcast.
yeah, instead of the other things where we just, well, no different. We just complained about stuff
And then someone can make a video about us complaining.
and then take pictures of us in public.
Sounds good. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll be back again at some point.
Have a good night or day or wherever you live. It's night here, but maybe it's day somewhere for somebody. And if you're watching on demand, it's 5 o'clock anywhere, somewhere.
Yeah, there you go. All right, take it easy, guys.